Okay, so no sound here on this shot. We may be able to get a little bit from a little bit further back here. And there you can kind of hear the helicopter that's circling above the house. So we have a couple of different angles that we're monitoring. We also have a live image coming to us out of Lewiston as well. So we're monitoring that in the meantime too. But back to the timeline, it was at 9:26 p.m. that the Lewiston Police Department received a call who identified the man in the photos as 40-year-old Robert Card of Bowdoin, Maine. At 9:56 p.m., the Lisbon Police Department notified Lewiston Police that it had located a white Subaru at a boat launch in Lisbon. That vehicle was confirmed to belong to Card. And again, he now remains at large. More than 350 law enforcement members, federal, state, local agencies, you name it, are continuing to search for him. Again, authorities continuing to stress that he is armed and dangerous. We're also learning more about his background as well, his extensive training with firearms, that he also had mental health issues, including hearing voices and threatening to shoot up the National Guard base in Saco, Maine. More information about him as well, that he is a petroleum supply specialist in the Army Reserve, having enlisted in December 2002. That's according to an Army spokesperson who told Fox News, adding that he has had no combat deployments. Officials still have yet to name publicly any of the 18 victims. And as of this morning, 10 of the victims had yet to be identified. Police have also confirmed that 7 people, 1 female and 6 males, were killed at the bowling alley, which was holding a youth league at the time of the shooting. We've been hearing a lot of questions about the ages of the victims, though none of that has been made very clear to us from either the hospital staff, nor police, nor lawmakers that we've all heard from today. We also know that 8 males were killed at the bar and grill, and that 3 additional people died after first responders rushed them to Central Maine Medical Hospital in Lewiston. An additional 13 people also injured in the shootings. So we'll see what happens here as the search warrant is executed, and as we learn more about if the suspect, Robert Card, is inside of the home. Trying to get a better look here of this window activity that we're watching. So we're going to keep an eye on this live feed that we're getting in here. I also want to show you another live picture. This is out of Lewiston, where we're getting a lot of police activity as well. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. Obviously, we have a lot more to show you here as we continue on with our coverage. This could be a very long evening ahead if the suspect is inside of the home, if they are potentially going to be negotiating with him. And regardless, if this manhunt continues, whether he's inside or not, we know that there's a lot of work to be done as law enforcement works to try to find this very dangerous individual who has killed 18 people in a horrific mass shooting in Maine. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
area now, more law enforcement vehicles moving out of this area, but a couple of them we can see still in position. You okay? Mm-hmm. Thanks for the charger.
Yeah, it's almost charger's almost dead.
Oh shit. Okay. Well then I've got 82%. So maybe I should just go ahead.
How much?
82. So why don't I'll unplug. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Copy that, Charlie. Got it. Thank you. All right, they're going to come to us soon, again, and then we're going to get on the top of the 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Okay. I wonder if can the 9 o'clock take our? Can you ask if the 9 o'clock can just take our same IFB?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would help us.
I wonder if we still have the no light rule.
I think it makes for a better shot without lights, don't you?
It's very sexy.
Can you see more? I think you can.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If all of us were flooding it.
It was really eerie with the phone lights on yet.
Can you guys hear that all right? If anybody's in the chat, if they're not just watching from like the TV or something.
I think they were just flying this helicopter just to make noise interference.
It's possible, sure. Yeah. I mean, that thing's been circling for.
Right, but I don't think he's looking or he's just making noise, just going around circles. Psyops. And we wouldn't know if they were making an announcement or not.
No. Well, no, we won't, because they were doing the announcements when that thing was up.
Oh, they were?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So you live where? New York or Washington? Washington. I was just there for a wedding last week. It was at a hotel called The Line. It was really in the hipster part of town. I mean, it just smelled like marijuana everywhere. It was called Adams. Adams. It was, no, it was in The Line Hotel. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very hipster. And I said, "Some hipster." Oh, yeah. Are you assigned to a show? We went to the African American Museum on Saturday, and then when we came out, we saw this massive protest in red. I didn't see us in it, but I was looking at it. Where is it?
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Okay.
Guys that were in the field, I think they just got back to the car.
Oh,
I
right.
think those guys were the guys who got
Were those law enforcement guys?
Yep. They're out there creeping around.
So, oh, that was the guy who was up the hill, right? That was that one with the blue lights. Wasn't he the one that was further up the hill?
Yes.
Okay, so they may be moving out completely. I see other guys with flashlights coming this way. What's that light? Okay, no worries, guys. Those are guys with flashlights, aren't they?
They are.
And they're walking. Yes, Charlie, yes. Sure. Okay, Charlie. Copy that. 3 guys with flashlights. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, Charlie. Do they get flashlights or lights on their helmets?
I don't know. Their lights go for sure.
Yeah.
They're on their heads. No, they're not. They're,
Copy that.
I don't know. They're holding them.
Copy that. Thank you, Brooke.
They kind of look like soldiers. They look like soldiers.
But those are law enforcement personnel, clearly, right?
Yeah, they look like soldiers.
Are they wearing tactical gear?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to shoot them too close, right, for their safety or something.
Yeah, and I guess I can't. I mean,
They got a dog, too.
how would you advise me to describe this? That they've been moving around on foot, but not getting any more specific than that?
They have a dog, a canine.
They do have a canine?
Yeah. Everybody's going home, right?
Well, that may be good news for us, for our health. Huh? Okay, hey, thanks, man. Great fucking job, seriously. Thank you, Scott.
Said they're having a real hard time since Drew died,
Oh,
finding their way, and they're
yeah.
all kind of lost and without a leader or a real strong.
Well,
He was a very strong reporter.
Yeah, they can talk more about this off off mic.
Yeah.
They want me to point.
The house.
Oh, yes. It's I'm sorry. It's Jonathan. Yes, he can point at the house. Yes.
That's what?
He went to do the John Berman shot, the anchor shot.
He does like to have the excessive lighting.
Right, Anderson. We've seen more repositioning of law enforcement vehicles in the last few minutes. We also see personnel on the ground moving around, again, very methodically. The spotlight has not really shifted, but there is a vehicle, a law enforcement vehicle, and a large one, I should say, that is in the driveway there that you can see in our camera shot. So what we can tell you is that a short time ago, a stream of 7 law enforcement vehicles left the area. They left a couple of law enforcement vehicles here. We have just seen personnel on the ground carrying flashlights, but they were moving away from the house and then into vehicles. So not quite indicating maybe that they're packing up, but they could be getting ready to extract from the area. And you see another vehicle there that is on the move, but we'll see where they go. Again, this has been an ongoing fluid situation now for close to the last 2 hours. where they, in the early part of that sequence, they were on a loudspeaker trying to appeal to whoever was in the house, possibly, to come out with their hands up with nothing in their hands, to follow their instructions. They were almost making a personal appeal to whoever might be in there, saying, we know this could be intimidating for you. We don't want anyone else to get hurt. You know, and kind of almost appealing on a personal level to whoever might have been there. So that's kind of how it's played out. No indication that anyone has been in there, and law enforcement now kind of methodically moving around. Some personnel seeming to be leaving now.
Hey, it's Brian Todd's PJ.
That vehicle.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Brooke. Look, you see the last vehicle's seemingly pulling out now. You're still hot. I'm good. How are you? Okay. Law enforcement seems to be pulling out for the final time here, just so you know.
It's about right. In a second.
Yes, I am. I'm right here. They can hear me, but I'm really loud. Test, 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 test. Can't really talk much louder than this. Check, 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 check.
It's loud and clear here.
Loud and clear over here. Test, test, test.
Remember, it's channel 2.
Channel 2. Make sure you're using channel 2.
Hey guys, 9 o'clock. You want to take the shot as it is, or you want me in front of the camera? Because these guys are all pulling out here. Yeah.
Sorry.
I do. Right, Caitlin. It seems that in the last couple of minutes, right before you came on, the final law enforcement vehicles that were there seemed to have pulled out. They just kind of streamed right past us here. I'd say there were 3 or 4 of them, but just moments before that, there were about 7 law enforcement vehicles that pulled out. They had kept the vehicle, you know, basically right in front of the house with a spotlight trained on the house. Right behind it now is complete darkness, so we do get an indication now just from the physical eye on the ground that we're seeing that law enforcement has left the area. But this has been quite a tense scene, I can say, over the last 2 hours. They had been here earlier today. They had used flashbangs as they approached the house, seemingly in an effort to possibly shock anybody who might be in the house. That is, we're told that is standard procedure. I'm not sure exactly what they did at the house at that time. Then they all left. Then at about 7 p.m. Eastern time, roughly 2 hours ago, a lot of law enforcement assets just flooded back into this area very quickly. They set up a perimeter around it. They had air assets like drones, helicopters, and other things. They had K9 teams out here. They had a lot of vehicles here. They surrounded the house. They trained a spotlight on the house. They had flashing lights.
Road here, where there was a field and crews are also gathered there and across the road as the scene has just developed. It's quite the development as we saw all the cars leave down this road. So we will see what's next and if they in fact got Robert Carter or not.
Again, if you're just joining us, we have our reporter Alex Haskell live in Bowdoin at a scene police have had a heavy presence at. We also have our Sam Rogers there. And I want to go back to you, Sam, because as Zach mentioned, this is something that you have been covering since last night. You've been with us since last night. And in fact, last night you were in the scene of an active scene as well in Lisbon. And it does seem like police have been taking all of these scenes as a big group. We know that Robert Card, they keep saying, is considered armed and dangerous. How would you kind of compare the scenes that you've been at?
Yeah, Amanda, we actually mentioned this last night. I believe it was Chris brought up a good point about how our law enforcement agencies across the state, whether that's local, sheriff's office, state police, they prepare for these kinds of situations. Of course, this is really the first time they've ever had to deal with a mass shooting type level. But whether it was reporting in the Bangor Brewer area or down in Lewiston for other stories or in Portland, all over the state, they have those strength in numbers. So like we saw last night at Lisbon Falls, if you were with us last night and very early into the morning, just as a car gets out of our way here, you saw 20 to 25 police officers all gathered, all waiting. And then when we would try to find a better access point to maybe gain a little bit more information, maybe try to find a better camera angle, you would drive about a mile down the road and see another checkpoint of law enforcement officers. As we heard today, hundreds of officers, sheriff's deputies, state police, federal agents, all having a hand in this manhunt. And we see that typically, again, like I said a few minutes ago, whether it's a standoff for a search warrant or a drug arrest, we typically see a large number of law enforcement officers because, as Chris also said, they don't know what is going to happen. You want to take that precaution. In the last 24 or almost 25 hours at this point, it's been what happens when the actual mass casualty event has happened. So they've had the practice. The scenes, again, as we set up on the Hill, number of police a little bit similar, but the intensity clearly higher. When it's a low intensity scene, of course, there's more kind of laid back. Police officers would come up to us and give us information saying, hey, you know, this is kind of the type of situation we're dealing with. It might be a little while, or they'll just be straight up and say, hey, we made the arrest, here are the details, and go on your way. Whereas this situation with a manhunt with communities on lockdown in those stay and shelter in place orders, a lot more sensitivity because a lot of people were scared, a lot of people were frustrated. And again, without knowing what the conclusion of all these law enforcement officers clearing, again, we've seen similar processions at these type of standoffs, but the intensity made even bigger, even more intense with all the reporters. You're starting to see them file down from the Hill right now. So Brian and Amanda, I think a lot of people are rooting that this is becoming the end here.
Certainly, and certainly we are all rooting for that back here as well.
I don't want to, I mean, this is not normal.
Right.
Let us remember that. I think we're all caught up in what's happening right now. But there are hundreds of police officers combing through small Maine towns.
Right.
There are reporters from all over the country, all over the world. You could hear them in Alex's live shot there. These are reporters who go out into these towns every day. Alex is on this shift every evening in small towns like this, standing on those dark roads alone, not standing next to dozens and dozens of reporters. And it's not just the reporting side of this, it's the law enforcement side, it's the manhunt portion of this too. The state hasn't seen something like this in many, many years. I said it well over an hour ago now, but the last time we saw a manhunt of this size was back in April of 2018 with the murder of Somerset County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Eugene Cole. I spoke to his wife earlier today. She being very candid that this has been a truly difficult time for her, glued to the TV like much of the state is. But she said that what's happening in Lewiston and now in surrounding communities brought her back to 5.5 years ago. She said, quote, "Granted, my situation was nothing compared to this one, but the massive manhunt in the aftermath of my husband's murder put this community in such a state of shock and horror. My heart breaks for the Lewiston community."
And it certainly explains why we have continued this on-air coverage for
reporting to suggest that if he's not in the home, he may have fled into the surrounding nearby wilderness. You and I last spoke a couple months back when Pennsylvania state authorities were trying to search for that escaped inmate, Danilo Cavalcante. They finally found him because they were using flights in the air with heat signature radar to scope him out in the very, very thick underbrush below. That seems to be a tactic and a method that's being used in this search as well. Very similar, David. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, you know, I remember that very well, and that's how they finally grabbed the guy, because he moved outside of cover. They got a good signature on the flare, but there are ways to defeat infrared. Now, this individual has military training, and believe me, snipers, for example, and individuals who are trained in any sort of close quarter battle with the military understand how the enemy can use infrared against them and how to defeat that. So I don't want to explain to people how you defeat the signature, but it is possible. There are a number of ways to do that, and he may know that. He may also be in that residence, in which case, you know, that's why they're not getting any movement outside. So I mean, it's a great technique. We used to train with it when I was an agent in New York, just for these type of things, and it really is pretty spectacular, but it can be defeated.
Yeah, I want to talk about his background here. I want to put up this tweet from our own Fox's Liz Frieden. She's a producer at the Pentagon for Jennifer Griffin. She says this: new info on suspected shooter Robert Card. This is from an Army spokesperson. Quote, "The Army did not train Card as a firearms instructor, nor did he serve in that capacity for the Army. Due to the Privacy Act and the ongoing investigation, we cannot provide further details." So, David, there was some reporting to suggest he was some type of firearms instructor and expert, that he knew his way around firearms, so much so that he may have done that privately, but not in a capacity when he was in the Army. We're being told there's reporting to suggest that he was some type of refueling specialist there in the Army. Of course, there's a base in Maine as well, Saco, the base there, that reporting suggests he threatened in the run-up to this horrible rampage here. So that's the extent of some of his Army background. But nonetheless, I mean, he could have a very elaborate firearms background, training, and history.
Well, I mean, look, he's been in the military, so he certainly knows his way around a rifle. The Army has said he was not a military firearms instructor, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a private instructor. So that could be he had an NRA certification. It could be that he was certified in the state of Maine to provide small arms training. So, you know, let's assume he knows enough that he's not just a complete layperson, that he's fairly well trained, at least with the rifle that he's using. You know, that's number one. I think the most important element to look at here, however, is the fact that this entire incident screamed for intervention that was not undertaken. We know he's had a history of mental issues. We know he had time in a mental hospital. We know he made threats. You would think, I mean, this is not anything surprising to people listening to the show right now, that if someone is showing signs of mental instability and has made threats and is talking about hearing voices, the last thing you want them to be able to do is get their hands on a weapon. You need to, there needs to be, look, we've gone through this, and you and I have talked about this before. There needs to be a mechanism by which, certainly, if someone has been judged by a medical professional to have a mental impairment, we need to be able to get a warrant to go to that person's residence and take their weapons. And in addition to that, there needs to be some mechanism by which when they try to purchase a firearm, at least legally, when the background check, because right now background check only covers criminal history. You would think that there'd be some additional flag for someone who has been judged mentally unstable by a medical professional. At least there should be some pause in that process to say, hey, look, we need a secondary level of inspection here before we make the sale of the firearm. But again, once again, not done with tragic results.
Yeah. I mean, David, just this summer, that sensitive law enforcement bulletin that went out last night that we reported on here said just this summer he was committed for mental health evaluation over the course of, I believe, several days or several weeks. I'm not entirely sure there. But just that alone, to your point, would be a quote-unquote red flag in something like this for law enforcement, but it wasn't, and you can kind of go into the laws that Maine has on the books regarding that as well. But I want to put these photos up from last night. I mean, you also, David, you know your way around firearms. I mean, look at that weapon. That is a huge weapon. Do you have any idea? We haven't heard yet the provenance of the weapon or what kind of weapon it was, but if you could take a guess, could you make that out?
It's really blurry. It looks to be some sort of AR type platform, and there are a number of manufacturers who make that weapon. The magazine is interesting. Again, it's very blurry. My guess is that there's a setup, a tandem setup, where in other words, you have one magazine that's physically in the magazine well of the weapon. Attached to that by a clip, if you look at that picture on the left-hand side of the screen, it looks like it's a very, very wide, like it looks wider than a magazine should be. It's possible there's a clip or a little fastening device attaching the magazine in the weapon to an additional magazine that's basically being carried alongside that one. So that allows for a fast reload. So how you would do it is, once your magazine runs dry, you drop that magazine, maintain a hold of that magazine, and simply just move it. In this case, you'd move it laterally left a little bit and then insert the fresh magazine into the magazine well. So those things are very, very commonly used. So that shows he was prepared for a fast reload at least.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of get you on that as well, as we had those photos come out last night, those still images of the surveillance video as he was walking in, David, to this bowling alley. This was one of the sites of this mass atrocity there. I do also want to just update everyone. Looks like we lost our shots outside of the home. That's okay. We're going to keep talking to David here. We're getting a statement in, though, from Maine State Police. They say law enforcement officials are currently on Meadow Road in the town of Bowdoin to execute several search warrants. The announcements that are being heard over a loudspeaker are standard search warrant announcements when executing a warrant to ensure the safety of all involved. It's unknown whether Robert Card is in any of the homes law enforcement will search. Law enforcement officials are simply doing their due diligence by tracking down every lead in an effort to locate and apprehend Mr. Card. And we're also getting more details, more information in from senior law enforcement officials to Fox. David, they are saying that they want to take him alive. They want to get him alive. But where do you think this is going from here? We're now more than 24 hours after this all began. What does your gut tell you right now about possibly where the suspect could be and where the investigation is going?
Well, I mean, obviously, they want to get in the house to see what's there, see if he's made any plans, if there's any diagrams, anything on his computer. Does it seem like he prepared to go to the wilderness, for example? Does he have food? Does he have shelter? You know, I looked at the weather in that area in Maine. Tonight, if he is in the woods, it's going to be fairly mild in the high 50s. Tomorrow night, the same way. Once we hit Saturday, the nights are dropping down into the high 30s and rain's coming in. So that'll be a factor as well. If he is in the woods right now, the elements are not really against him. Another couple of days, that's going to change. So that's a possibility. He may decide to take his own life. That's not uncommon. I think in this case, here's a guy who clearly has mental issues. I don't know that if that's playing into their assessment that they want to take them. You always try to take everyone alive anyway. It's not that you go out to not do that.
Okay.
The problem is he going to cooperate in that plan, and that's yet to be seen.
Yeah. I just want to go over some of the reporting that we've covered that Fox has gotten throughout the course of the day, and you can chime in and respond to some of it, David. So this is from two senior law enforcement sources to Fox News, according to David Spunt, our correspondent at the Justice Department. So they believed Robert Card planned this attack well in advance and had several hiding spots ready for him. Also, aircraft with heat-sensing technology continue to fly above the search area, something I mentioned. Also, there are command centers for both agencies here in Washington. Director Christopher Wray of the FBI and ATF leaders are getting frequent updates. Also, ATF is currently trying to locate the serial number for the weapon used based on internal data. The ATF is also trying to locate other guns that he may have obtained legally or illegally. A source says it's obvious he had intense training with firearms, and that is making the search much more difficult. Also, DOJ officials are quickly working to discover a motive to see if this could be classified as a hate crime or some other form of domestic terrorism. And so right now, David, we are learning as well, some news outlets are saying that domestic terrorism has been ruled out. That's according to ABC News. We'll wait for Fox to see if we have anything on that as well. There's also been reporting out there to suggest, this was in NBC News today, that he left some type of note behind. And so let's get into the motive factor, David. We talk about motive so much with you in these situations. Have you seen anything to suggest a motive forming, or right now that the investigation is onto something that might consist of a motive?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the only reporting that I'm aware of that is probative is the fact that he's been treated for mental health issues. So a guy who's hearing voices, I mean, this is not, it's kind of hard to make the case that it's a hate crime when someone is in the situation he apparently is in. So I think they're probably going off the assumption that it's mental instability that's the motive here. I mean, a person who's not thinking clearly or does not have the capacity to think clearly, how do you really judge motive in a case like this? With respect to some of the other things, he seems like he has prepared. Just because you're mentally unstable doesn't mean you lose your intellect.
Okay.
So if he has prepared safe locations, he might have set up lean-tos or shacks or other shelters or tents in various areas in the woods near where he is. So if he has prepared, that's going to make things more difficult. And understand that every step that law enforcement takes, either toward the house or searching the woods, at any moment, this guy could open fire with a rifle. So it's extraordinarily dangerous.
Yeah, also, this is interesting, too. The FBI and the ATF cannot take the lead on the case unless a federal crime has been committed. So they're looking to see if there is a federal avenue, but as of now, this remains a state matter there in Maine. But, David, when you talk about the response, I mean, literally the entire state, parts of New Hampshire, the Boston area is so on edge right now. Schools continue to be shut down. Businesses continue to be shut down. Also, we know that residents are so on ease. There's a shelter-in-place order that has not been lifted, as far as we are concerned, for the immediate vicinity of where this all occurred in Lewiston. This is an ongoing homicide investigation, and Robert Card is considered armed and dangerous, and we're 24 hours since this all unfolded, and unfortunately, we lost our live pictures outside of his last known address. But this is some scary stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, anyone who enters any branch of the military is going to be trained in how to use a rifle. That means they're going to know how to maintain the rifle, they're going to know how to load the rifle, discharge the rifle, and fire it with reasonable accuracy. So it seems clear that he has at least that level of training, and if he has been instructing in the use of small arms. He may have had additional skills and training and development on his own. In that picture you have up now, it looks like it looks like he's manipulating the bolt carrier. They changed the slide now, but it could be in the middle of a reload or post reload. At that point, the middle one there, he looks like he's manipulating. He's got the charging handle back, maybe. It's kind of hard for me to see. It's very blurry on my screen. Here in this picture, he just shoulders the weapon and he's aiming at, he's aiming at human beings that he shot without warning and without any mercy. It's just horrific. And once again, I keep harping back on it. This could have been prevented. And if anything positive comes out of this, people need to demand, not just forget about it, demand that situations like this be nipped in the bud. And and in this case, this guy was screaming for help. As far as his mental health record, there is no doubt that they had. I mean, just from a layperson's point of view, a person saying he's hearing voices and he threatens to shoot up the base, and you he's got access to firearms, and you make no move to secure those weapons. When I go over the facts in my head, I'm just completely stunned that something like still is allowed to happen.
And David, I have to reiterate the fact that this happened just a couple of months ago. You're talking about threats to the base, the mental commitment to the mental evaluations and the mental health ward. And so this is just so recent. And I think, to your point, a lot of people are asking themselves, well, how could law enforcement have let this slip between their fingers here? Also, though, to your point, I just want to get into the victims here, because 7 people were dead there at the bowling alley, 1 woman and 6 men. And then at the other location, this bar and grill, 8 people were killed. They were all males. 3 died on the way to the hospital. Still, so many are injured. I'll be looking for whether or not Robert Card knew any of these people, or whether this was, yes, senseless, but entirely and indiscriminate and random. So we have to see if that will be a part of the motive here. But before we let you go, I just want to put this up here, because this is a map of how this all unfolded and a timeline as well. And so that is a pretty sizable area for where this suspect could be. I mean, you're talking about 2 locations where the shootings took place. The suspect's car is found there in Lisbon. And now the home search is in Bowdoin, which is like 25 miles from Lewiston itself. So law enforcement, yes, there are hundreds of law enforcement officials there, but they have their work cut out for them, don't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, look, they find the vehicle, but that doesn't mean he left on foot from that point. It's possible he has another vehicle they don't know about, or had some other means of transportation. Like, I mean, think of all the ways you can get out of someplace. You have a firearm, you take someone hostage, you steal a car, you have a car that no one knows about, parked in that area, preparing to dump the car that they're looking for and get into one that's not being sought. So I'm hoping that they have a reason to believe that he bailed out of that car and went on foot, but there's no guarantee that's the case. If imagine Maine is a big state, and that area is densely wooded. I mean, those of you the state of Maine is beautiful. I've been there many, many times. But imagine trying to find one person in all of that who does not want to be found. It's not, that's the task ahead of him. And by the way, while you're searching with extreme caution, because the person you're looking for may try and kill you.
Yeah, and we're just going to leave this up. Just want to get final thoughts from you, David, as we approach the bottom of the hour here. There was kind of a glimmer of hope. I think a lot of viewers thought that as well, because the search was so heavily concentrated on this one home there in Bowdoin. That kind of led us to believe maybe law enforcement was onto something, and then we heard the commands being shouted. Then we found out a search warrant was being executed, and that's pretty standard de rigueur stuff there from law enforcement. So it just remains to be seen how long and how far this manhunt is going to go throughout the next possibly 24 hours. Final thoughts. Obviously, we're all waiting with bated breath here to see if law enforcement can get the suspect, Robert Card. But what are the other things you'll be looking for going into the evening hours here?
Well, at some point, they're going to make entry into that residence and determine whether or not he's inside. And by the way, that statement that it's just, normal course of business. No, it's normal course of business to knock and announce prior to entry. But in the case of an armed individual, if you had an armed individual, you not do that unless state law prohibits it. I mean, some states allow no-knock warrants. I know they've gone out of fashion because unfortunately there's been a lot of misuse of them in the past. But if you thought that you're going to make entry in an armed individual, you'd want to make entry when you thought they were asleep or not in a situation where they were prepared for you. In this case, a little bit different. If there's a chance he's in the house, they're trying to call him out to try to avoid having to place law enforcement in harm's way, forcing entry into that home. That would be extraordinarily dangerous.
All right, David Katz, we do appreciate your expertise, your insight. Thanks for hanging around with us for the last 30 minutes. We know you're very, very busy, and we'll probably be speaking again once law enforcement makes their next move here there in southern Maine. David, thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, let's take a quick commercial break. Like I said, I'm Andrew Kraft. We do want to continue with this story. When we come back, we'll be showing you statements not only from President Biden, but also the Governor Janet Mills there in Maine as well, offering their condolences, offering their assistance and support. We'll also be showing you the latest press conference that happened this morning with all of those updates that David and I were just discussing. There's been several press conferences today there in Maine, some outside of the hospital, very brief ones, updating us on injured in these two shooting attacks.
Are heavy with grief. This heinous attack, which has robbed the lives of at least 18 Mainers and injured so many more, is the worst mass shooting that the state of Maine has ever experienced and could ever imagine. Today, I looked out my window in Washington, and I saw that the flags had been lowered. And I realized that it had been done to honor the victims of this horrific attack.
And I know it's still early, and we do not want to be overly political here, but Lester Holt mentioned the fact that this does spark a conversation around mental health among our gun safety laws in place. At that same press conference, Congressman Jared Golden, who his hometown is Lewiston, spoke even apologizing for his past votes against assault weapons ban, calling for Congress to ban assault weapons, and again apologizing, which was a significant moment for him and an emotional one in that press conference earlier today.
Specifically for forgiveness for the way he has voted and for not doing enough.
On that same vein, and with keeping in mind that now is not the time to make it political, addressing the mental health aspect is a fact that we at this station and reporters all out throughout the state have talked about for years. The lack of infrastructure in this state to take care of people who have severe mental health needs. And we're not just talking about buildings and beds, but also the people who care for them, the caregivers. There are projections that Maine is going to be short by thousands of healthcare workers by
As you all know, last night, local, county, state, and federal law enforcement officers from around the state of Maine responded to reports of an active shooter at several locations in Lewiston, including Spare Time Recreation and Schmangy's Bar and Grill. These law enforcement officers, in the face of danger, responded swiftly, selflessly, and with great bravery. bravery that they continue to demonstrate today as they search tirelessly for a person of interest in connection with last night's events. On behalf of all Maine people, I express my deep gratitude for your response and for your continued service. I also do so for Maine's hospitals and other medical emergency responders. I'm profoundly saddened to stand before you today and report that 18 people lost their lives and 13 people injured in last night's attacks. In memory of those we lost and in honor of those who were injured, President Biden and I have ordered all U.S. flags and state of Maine flags to be lowered to half-staff immediately for the next 5 days. Maine State Police have issued a shelter-in-place order for Lewiston, Lisbon, and Bowdoin as the manhunt for that person of interest, Robert Card of Bowdoin, continues. I will let law enforcement speak to the ongoing manhunt and to their investigation, but Mr. Card is considered armed and dangerous, and police advise that Maine people should not approach him under any circumstances. I continue to strongly urge Maine people to follow the direction of state and local law enforcement amid this ever-changing situation. Please, if you see anything suspicious, please call 911. There are still many things we don't yet know about these attacks, but the full weight of my administration is behind law enforcement's efforts to capture the person of interest, Robert Card, to hold whoever is responsible for this atrocity accountable under the full force of state and federal law, and to seek full justice for the victims and their families. We cannot and we will not rest in this endeavor. My administration is coordinating closely with local, regional, and federal officials to respond to this shooting. I have spoken twice with President Biden. I've spoken with Vice President Harris, Secretary of Homeland Security in my office, and Secretary of Health and Human Services, Becerra, all of whom have called me last night to express the Biden administration's full and unwavering support and to offer any and all help that we, the people of Maine, might require. The governors of our neighboring New England states and of other states have contacted me to offer aid, and I'm sincerely grateful for their friendship and support. We've been in touch with every member of the Maine congressional delegation, all of whom have offered their full support, for which I'm also grateful. I also spoke with Mayor Carl Chalene and Auburn Mayor Jason Levesque last night to reiterate that we are standing by them and that we are ready to provide any help people in these communities need, and to deploy all available state resources, including grief counselors and other mental health services. We need to help our communities heal. If you or a person you love need someone to talk to during this difficult time, please call or text 988 for free and confidential counseling. 988. Look, Lewiston is a special place. It's a close-knit community with a long history of hard work, of persistence, of faith, of opening its big heart to people everywhere. Lewiston is where I worked for years. It's where I met and married my husband and where our girls went to school. I love this place just as I love our whole state with my entire heart. I'm so deeply saddened, as is every one of the 1.3 million people of this beautiful state. This city did not deserve this terrible assault on its citizens, on its peace of mind, on its sense of security. No city does, no state, no people. No words can truly or fully measure the grief of many people today. Our small state of just 1.3 million people has long been known as one of the safest states in the nation. This attack strikes at the very heart of who we are and the values we hold dear for this precious place we call home. All Maine people are sharing in the sorrow of the families who lost loved ones last night. Loved ones, normal people who were killed or injured while unwinding from a day of work or while spending time with family and friends, socializing. So on behalf of the 1.3 million people of the whole state of Maine, I hold these families and this city in my heart today. I know that the people of Lewiston are enduring immeasurable pain. I wish I could take that pain off your hearts, off your shoulders, but I promise you this, we will all help you carry that grief. I ask many people to join me in offering our comfort to the families and friends who have lost someone, and in offering our prayers for swift recovery for those who are healing in Maine's hospitals today. This is a dark day for Maine. I know it's hard for us to think about healing when our hearts are broken. But I want every person in Maine to know that we will heal together. We are strong, we are resilient, we are a very caring people. In the days and weeks ahead, we will need to lean on those qualities more than ever before. As we move forward, struggling as we may, let us wrap our arms around one another, offer comfort and solace and love. I know the Maine State Police will continue to release information to the public as we confirm it, and information about any steps that the public might take to support the people of Lewiston at this time. May God bless the people of Lewiston and bless the memories of those we have lost. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Sasha.
Thank you very much, Governor. We certainly appreciate your support. The City of Lewiston does, the state of Maine, and certainly our first responders. We feel that love every day, and thank you very much for that. I would also say that we want to say thank you to a really large number of other elected officials across our state, whether that's the federal delegation, local elected officials, and many others that are part of organizations or law enforcement agencies that truly wanted to join us today at this particular press event and wanted to speak on behalf of their communities. And as the governor had mentioned, and everybody else will reiterate, our reality for today is that this suspect is still at large. And we want to provide community support for the victims, for the families, in the communities across the state. But we also have an incredibly strong laser-like focus on bringing this suspect into custody and ultimately to justice. So because of that mission for this particular event and today's activities, we're keeping the list of speakers and the agenda pretty tight. And that will include next up at the podium would be Chief Dave St. Pierre from the City of Lewiston, and some other members of his command staff are present. What I will say to the City of Lewiston, and you know this because you feel it every day, but you're lucky to have a chief like Chief St. Pierre and his entire law enforcement agency. From every level, those officers put their heart and their soul on the line on behalf of their community last night and into today. And they're doing it for the right reasons. They do it because they care. So the City of Lewiston and truly our co-responder family across the state of Maine is lucky to have Dave and his team in the mix with us. And we're also going to hear from Colonel William Ross from the Maine State Police. And Bill will highlight some of the timeline things that you're probably concerned about and certainly interested in from a story perspective. So the Colonel will come up and speak to that. And we'll also have Jody Cohen. And Jody is the special agent in charge for the FBI out of the Boston field office. And Jody will highlight some of those federal partnerships and some of the things that our federal partners are bringing to the table, bringing to bear to help us with this investigation. We also have a bunch of people here. Once you start naming people, you're going to have a problem because you're going to forget somebody or screw something up. But I would also tell you that a couple of our other federal partners are here. Kevin Neal, who's the U.S. Marshal for the District of Maine. We also have James Ferguson, and Jim is the special agent in charge from the ATF for the Boston Field Division. They are heavily invested with staff along with the FBI, and we can't thank them enough for all that they're doing on behalf of our state. I would also tell you that we are going to close with a brief Q&A, and we're going to try to get some of those questions out there. We appreciate your time, your patience, your professionalism, your partnership at getting this information out. I would think that those questions are going to be brief because, again, we do have a suspect at large. And while you can help us with that, we also need to get back to our teams to push forward on that. So with that in mind, I would be back up to the podium to kind of steer that a little bit. But for starters, I would like Chief St. Pierre to join.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Sawchuk, and welcome media partners, and thank you, Governor Mills, for those kind words. I'm going to keep this short. What I would like the very most is to express our deepest sympathies to the families and friends of the victims of this heinous crime. This is truly a tragedy that goes beyond comprehension. I'm confident in our community, that our community has and will continue to come together throughout this endeavor to bring this to a successful conclusion. Although difficult, I do ask the public to continue to be mindful of their own personal safety, and also that they be patient with the process as much as possible. There is extensive work and attention to detail that goes into such a large-scale investigation. I'm confident in the expertise and professionalism of our investigators and all law enforcement officials that are currently involved. This is an all-hands-on-deck approach. We have a great deal of collaboration and resources that have been made available to us. There are far too many to name individually, but I think Director Sawchuk named quite a few appropriately. There are far too many, as I've stated, but they are all appreciated more than you know. I want to thank all of our brave men and women of the Lewiston Police Department, Fire Department staff, medical personnel, first responders of any kind that came from far and wide and have come together and continue to work tirelessly in bringing this situation to an end. We hope to locate and hold the person accountable. I think you'll hear next from the state police, who is taking the lead in this investigation. Although that we are working hand in hand with them, I think Colonel Ross will be able to fill you in a little bit more.
Thank you, Chief. First and foremost, this is an ongoing homicide investigation and search for the person that is responsible for it. We're in the early stages of this investigation, and I just want to let you know we will have updates. We'll be putting some type of a schedule out later on. But again, early stages of a homicide investigation, we want to be careful that we're doing things correctly. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to give you a bit of a timeline here to kind of fill in some of the blanks and give you some of the facts as we know them right now. A lot of this information will then be transferred to the Attorney General's office, as they will be the lead prosecutor, again, in any homicide investigation. Last night, October 25th at approximately 6:56 p.m., the Auburn Communications Center received a 911 call of a male shooting in Just in Time, or the Spare Time Recreation Center in the town of Lewiston, located at 24 Mollison Way in Lewiston. Shortly after that, at about 7:08 p.m., the Communications Center received multiple 911 calls about an active shooter inside of a Schmenge's Billiards at 553 Lincoln Street in the town of Lewiston. A large law enforcement response from multiple surrounding agencies assisted the Lewiston Police Department in trying to identify who this individual was and what was happening. As you can imagine, this was a very fast-paced, fast-moving, very fluid scene, very dangerous scene that these guys and girls were going into. 18 people are now deceased at this time. The victims at the just-in-time establishment, 7 people are deceased there, 1 female and 6 males, all from an apparent gunshot wound. Victims at the Schmegley's Billiards, 8 are deceased. 7 males inside the establishment, 1 male outside of the establishment. Again, also apparent gunshot wounds. Multiple people were transferred to area hospitals, Central Maine Medical Center, St. Mary's, and Maine Medical Center. 3 people that were transferred to those hospitals are deceased, for a total of 18 people deceased at this time. The investigation into the person responsible for this identified a vehicle located at the Projedskot boat landing in Lisbon. That person, through the registration of that vehicle, was identified, as been stated earlier, as a Robert Card, born in 1983. Several of the deceased have been identified, and their families, next of kin, have been notified. Approximately 8 people at this point have been identified. 10 people, 10 of these victims, still need to be identified at this time. Currently, there is an arrest warrant for 8 counts of murder for Mr. Card. And the reason it's 8 counts because 10 people have not yet been identified. As those people are identified, the counts will probably go to the total of 18. He should be considered armed and dangerous. Based on our investigation, we believe this is someone that should not be approached. This is someone that should be, if you come into any contact with this individual or someone that you think looks like this individual, you were to call 911, and I'll provide some tip line numbers at the conclusion of my briefing. Lewiston Police Department, federal, state, county, and other local municipalities are involved in a coordinated search at this moment for this individual. So there's the ongoing investigation, and there's a search to apprehend this person. Both happen simultaneously. I can't stress this enough. This is an ongoing investigation in the early stages. More information will come out in conjunction with the Attorney General's office as the lead prosecutor. We can't share all of our information right now, and I'm sure you understand that. I'm going to give out 2 numbers that go to a tip line. 911 is also appropriate for this, but if anyone can call these 2 numbers, this would go to the State Police tip line. Area code 207-213-9526, 207-509-9002. And we'll be sending something out later that has that information in it if you weren't able to grab that now. Again, this is a very fluid situation. We have a lot of resources, as Chief St. Pierre had mentioned earlier, that are on the ground in a coordinated effort to apprehend this individual. We've notified the Department of Education, and they have determined what they're going to do with the schools. A lot of schools, area schools, were shut down today based on our conversation with them. Again, as more information comes in, we'll be providing it to you. Thank you for your time. This is a very difficult time for, I think, the community of Lewiston, difficult time for obviously the victims' families, and it's a tough time for law enforcement. It was a rough night last night, but we're committed to bringing whoever's responsible this to justice. And again, we are currently looking for Mr. Card right now, someone that we'd like to apprehend. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. And FBI Special Agent in Charge, Colin, if you could join me, please.
Thank you. My name is Joy Cohen. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of FBI Boston Division, which covers the state of Maine. Our hearts go out to everyone who was impacted as a result of the senseless violence. the FBI is working hand in hand with our law enforcement partners. Our evidence response team is here processing these very extensive scenes. We are providing investigative and tactical support, as well as our victim specialists are working with those affected by this tragedy. As this very active investigations continues to unfold, we're asking the public to stay vigilant and come forward with any information that you might have that you feel is helpful to our investigators. My pledge is that the FBI will carry out this investigative case with rigor. We will work day and night alongside our law enforcement partners to get the answers to the questions this community deserves. We thank the public for your continued cooperation and patience as we continue to work this very active investigation. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And I would say that the reality here from a resource standpoint is that when we've asked for anything, the answer has been yes, period. Tactical teams, evidence response teams, full-blown investigative units, detective units that have come from multiple states, whether it's the commissioners from Vermont and New Hampshire reaching out to me directly, Massachusetts saying, what do you need, Mike? What can we do for the state of Maine? So we are now prepared to try to take a few questions. And keep in mind, again, that we may not be able to answer as in-depth as you would like, and we don't plan on taking a great deal of questions. I think follow-up press events will allow for that.
So no one has really talked about the weapon that was used here, the AR style, so of course someone can talk about that. But the other thing here is there are reports that this individual had mental health issues, that he made threats to shoot up the National Guard. So clearly there were some signs there that he was on someone's radar. The question becomes, why was he in possession of this weapon? And certainly, why wasn't he stopped soon?
Yeah, I think those are all valid questions, and certainly questions that we are looking into now, but not questions that we can answer today. Considering that this occurred last night, there's still an active search for the suspect in question. So I appreciate those questions, but not something we're going to be able to answer right now.
Is it something that you're investigating and looking into?
It is certainly one of those things that we want to follow up on, all aspects of that. Go ahead, right here. Yes.
Can you give us a sense of the ages of who has died, how many are under 18 and how many are over 18?
I'm not sure we have that information with us today. We wanted to break it down by gender because that's something we had readily available. We did not break this down into age ranges at all.
Sir, what can you tell us? What can you tell us about the background of the suspect in this case, or I should say the person of interest? Because I noticed the language is very clear. It's like person of interest, not suspect. So why use that terminology, and what can you tell us about his background?
Yeah, I think we used person of interest last night for half of the room that was here for that press event. As the Colonel had mentioned, there is now arrest warrants for murder for this particular individual, Mr. Card. So he is viewed as a suspect, and there is a full court press by all of our partners to bring him into custody. What was the second piece of that question?
What can you tell us about his background? Just wanted to ask a second ago about the idea that he had voiced concerns about his own mental health, right? Had been committed, according to language in the police bulletin, to a mental health facility for weeks. How could someone that fits that profile still be in possession of semi-automatic weapons?
Well, I do think that the statutes around firearms and the possession of those are pretty complex. I know that we will be reviewing that information as we move forward, but that's not an answer that we're prepared to give today. Because that leads to motive. You're talking about behavioral health issues and how that impacts this situation. I would expect you'll hear back from us on that in the future. Right here, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question about it. We've seen helicopters as far north as Monmouth. Can you tell us anything about what's leading you that far north of the scene where you're coming from?
Yeah, sure. So we have law enforcement assets that are deployed over a number of communities doing follow-ups on a number of different things. So as you can imagine, there's a great deal of search warrants that we're following up on. We do have partners, that helicopters from the New Hampshire State Police. That copter was here last night to assist us as well. So whether we have tactical elements out or we're searching an area, some of those air assets would be very, very valuable for us. So that's what they're doing.
That's leading you there?
We're not going to speak to what brings us to a specific community one way or the other.
Identifying the unidentified victims, what are people encouraged to do? Is there DNA being tested from family members who may have missing loved ones? Like, what's that approach right now?
Yeah, so we did have a family reunification center opened last night. We do have behavioral health liaisons that are fully engaged to work with families and work with loved ones and work with victims, for that matter, that may be in a hospital and seeking treatment. So those things are actively occurring. We are dealing with each one of those situations separately. So do we need DNA on that? Are we just waiting to find a loved one, some kind of family member that we can make a notification? I think that varies across the board. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Right here.
Yes, but there's some sort of triggering event. Is that something that you're investigating?
I think we're always concerned around motive. That you say triggering event, that's a motive for us. Again, that's not something we're prepared to discuss today, but I do appreciate the question. It's clearly something that's important. One additional follow-up from you.
Can you help us understand why these locations, why this bar, why this bowling alley? Was he looking for someone? Was he looking for something?
I think that does speak to motive, so I appreciate the follow-up, but not something we're going to be prepared to answer today. I'm going to have one more question. Right here, sir. Right here.
Can you say, is Card, first of all, to clarify, the arrest warrants issued today, and can you say if Card is still in the stage or even still alive?
Well, we're actively searching for him. If I knew the answers to those questions, and this would be a different press conference, I would assume. So we don't know his location, and I'll leave it at that. And we are working with the Attorney General's office reference to those questions. So with that in mind, we're done taking questions for now. So we are going to actually take off at this point. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate that.
Have there been any credible sightings? I mean, we've not really gotten many answers. So
Thank you.
'Hearts are broken, but I want every person in Maine to know that we will heal together. And she said that as much there in that press conference. She also says, I know the Maine State Police will continue to release information to the public as we confirm it, and information about any steps the public can take to support the people of Lewiston in this time. We heard her on camera say there in front of all those people there at that press conference today, if she could take the weight off the heart, off the shoulders of the grieving people of Maine, she would do it. And there are so many people grieving tonight for the loss of these 18 individuals there at that bowling alley and at that bar in Lewiston just last night, taken so senselessly. And we have to keep you up to speed, up to date on all the developments in this story going forward. But we did want to devote the 6 o'clock hour here on the West Coast, the 9 o'clock hour there on the East Coast to this story, the Maine massacre. We'll see everyone in 2 minutes. When we come back, though, we'll be talking to some of our friends and experts as well on another major story. That, of course, is the Israel-Hamas war. Developments there when we come back.
"27 hours ago. The reason that we have been on the air nonstop is because police have called Robert Card armed and dangerous, and there is a public safety risk, which police have by no means said is no longer a threat to the public. And so it is our duty as journalists to keep our public informed and safe. And so that is what we are attempting to do with our coverage here by explaining to you not only what has happened, but also remembering the 18 people shot and killed, the 13 people injured.
Yeah, that video from earlier today, aerials over spare time, where that shooting first broke out now well over 24 hours ago. Inside not that location, but actually the second location, the bar and grill, was the manager, Joseph Joey Walker. Jack Molman was outside Central Maine Medical Center last night speaking to City Councilor Leroy Walker, who was the father of Joey. He was looking for him, kind of fearing the worst, and unfortunately the worst came true. He was the manager at Schmeggy's Bar and Grill, and Lester Holt spoke to his father earlier today. Take a little bit of a listen to that.
Joey Walker was shot to death,
at Shemigis. Shot to death, but then he went into telling her that he died as a hero because he picked up a butcher knife from somewhere. You know, he has all that stuff near the bar anyways. And he tried to go at the gunman to stop him from shooting anybody else. The gunman shot him twice through this.
Does it change your pain at all?
Oh.
Knowing that?
It made it worse. Yeah, it made it worse.
Talking with Leroy Walker, who is an Auburn City Councilor, we know that his son Joey was one of the victims in this shooting.
So if you were with us last night when we were on the air, we would be on there for a while with you now, obviously. We also spoke with him when he didn't know.
Right.
All he knew was that he could not get in touch with his son, which was unusual. He said they usually would have been in touch every day. And he said he knew that if his son had been able to get out safely, he somehow would have communicated with his dad. So he was kind of in this position of, I feel inside, I know what happened here.
Right.
But he was waiting for official word, and then certainly today got the official word, and clearly devastating as it would be. And as we are learning today, is for so many families. And that number still jumps out. You see it on the bottom of your screen there. 18 people killed in Lewiston shooting. Doesn't get easier to read.
No.
Doesn't get easier to see and recognize. That's a big number.
It's a very big number, and we know at least 13 others injured. We know hospital staff still working to help a lot of families here, a lot of those victims. And in Lewiston at Central Maine Medical Center last night, we were seeing crowds of families outside of that major trauma hospital there. And also in Lewiston tonight, we have had our Don Kerrigan there all day long. You have been, Don, a part of a lot of the press briefings we've had from police this morning and then from members of our delegation.
Yeah, there's been a lot of words spoken. There's still a lot of detail, a lot of information that we don't have, lots of questions we would like to have answered now, and we can't get those answers now, perhaps in some cases because the folks we ask don't have them yet. And that's going to unfold the next couple of days. I wanted first, though, to talk about a little more about what you folks were just talking about, which is the emotional impact of this, not just on Lewiston and Auburn, but really on the whole state of Maine. I was very surprised to learn how that schools and businesses were closed today, far, far away from Lewiston and Auburn, far from where you would reasonably think there might be an actual threat from a gunman at large. And I think some of it is shock, some of it certainly sadness, and in thoughts and prayers of the people here in Lewiston. This tragedy casts a long shadow. As you were talking a few minutes ago, Bath Iron Works worker lost his life last night. That extends to hundreds of people far flung. I was a worker for a beverage distributor this morning in the town where I live, and his company, based in the Portland area, one of their employees at the locations last night who lost his life. So this tragedy reaches out way, way beyond Maine, really touching all of our state. Governor Mills at the briefing this morning, which seems a very long time ago now, talked about that. The governor was very hoarse, her voice, because she had been up talking all night and working on this previously. But she talked about that emotional impact and how it really people here in Lewiston. Let's listen.
I know that the people of Lewiston are enduring immeasurable pain. I wish I could take that pain off your hearts, off your shoulders, but I promise you this, we will all help you carry that grief. I ask Maine people to join me in offering our comfort to the families and friends who have lost someone, and in offering our prayers for swift recovery for those who are healing in Maine's hospitals today. This is a dark day for Maine. I know it's hard for us to think about healing when our hearts are broken. But I want every person in Maine to know that we will heal together.
We, of course, have watched with great sadness as these mass shootings have happened in other parts of the country, never really expecting that our city, our largest city in Maine, would be added to those list of mass shooting cities. And it's just a terrible shame, a terrible impact, but the search goes on. Shannon Moss from Public Safety says that they are continuing to search in the Lisbon area, says they'll be back in Bowdoin tomorrow to search another house. Meanwhile, the question exists still, what do people do tomorrow? Do businesses reopen? Do they stay closed? And questions won't be answered till tomorrow.
Don Kerrigan there, live for us in Lewiston, and thank you, Don. And his microphone was cutting out a little bit there, but important to reiterate kind of what he just said at the end there. Shannon Moss from the Department of Public Safety is saying, most importantly, the search continues, and that they'll be focused on Lisbon and Bowdoin tomorrow. Basically, that's the focus at this point. And you've been hearing us say that, but that's why we're still with you. Because there is that public safety concern for someone who is considered armed and dangerous. And we did see a heavy police presence in Bowdoin already today. We know they executed a search warrant at a home in Bowdoin on Meadows Road. And that's actually where we have Alex Haskell joining us live now. And Alex, we had you for a couple of hours earlier where there was a lot of presence. Seems fairly quiet there now.
Things are quiet. Actually, not too long ago, law enforcement came over to us and said basically there is no longer a scene. All law enforcement have left, but that wasn't the case just a few hours ago, where law enforcement just flooded in on this home down the road here behind me. It's obviously dark, you can't see it, but not too far away from us. You know, we were here a little before 6 o'clock. We were just kind of hanging out. Law enforcement had blocked off this road as they were executing a search warrant on a home. Things seemed to be quiet. And then as things got dark, actually a member of law enforcement came up to us, all reporters and photographers. There were dozens of us here just kind of waiting and watching to see what was going to happen here. The law enforcement official came up to us and asked us to turn our lights off that we have on top of the camera, like one that we're using right now, asked us to turn those off because of a dangerous situation. So we, of course, all listened to that law enforcement person and turned our lights off. And what happened next was pretty incredible. We saw large amounts of law enforcement come down the road. There were at least 2 armored vehicles. One I saw was from the New Hampshire State Police. They were here, followed by some other cruisers, and then they just slowly started to surround this home. They went in with these armored vehicles, law enforcement officers on foot, armed. There were canine teams, and there was a helicopter above all in this home. And then we heard someone speak over a bullhorn, a member of law enforcement, call Robert Card out by his name, saying that we know that you're inside this home. Come out with your hands up with nothing in them. Law enforcement also saying, we won't hurt you. We won't hurt you. We heard this. They were repeating these lines for quite some time, and then they just stopped. And then it was sort of quiet, not much happening. Slowly, law enforcement would change their positions. They would come out of the driveway, come in. Eventually, we saw a crew leave, and then another crew leave, and that was basically it leading up to the situation that we have right now behind us. Just utter blackness, and that was not the case not too long ago, where we had dozens of reporters here and many law enforcement vehicles. So that is the scene here right now, Brian and Amanda, and the big question is, where is Robert Card, obviously?
Alex Haskell live in Bowdoin tonight, and Alex just walked you through what several hours was like this afternoon. But you know, even for those of us who have been doing this a while, very unusual circumstances that we saw unfold there. You know, we often have interaction with law enforcement. We're on the scene of something that is unfolding. But to have a situation like that, to say, turn your lights off, something big's going on, and then we sat there with Alex in the dark,
right,
watching whatever was going on unfold at that house in Bowdoin. And clearly it seems at this point that he was not in the house.
And to have that, to your point, to have that situation where, you know, it's not often that we hear back in this room, because you and I are both reporters at heart. We have both been out there. It's not often that we back here are genuinely concerned about our reporters out in the field. And just, you know, that's some of the stuff that we're dealing with here back here, as much as you are dealing with as you're watching, is that uncertainty of, you know, this is our friend, this is our colleague out there,
and we're all watching this happen.
And we know it's a dangerous situation. Right. Yeah.
Especially when law enforcement come over and tell you that. So, you know, this whole thing is dangerous. You know, every aspect of it. Our healthcare workers that are in the middle of it, the law enforcement that are in the middle of it. And so all we're trying to do is stay safe and get you the information. It was almost 12 hours ago now. There was a press briefing at Lewiston City Hall, 10:30 this morning. We heard from Governor Janet Mills and law enforcement officials, and we got a real look at what the actual timeline looked like. You know, we all had our own notes of what happened through the night last night. We got a real look from Colonel William Ross of the Maine State Police of what unfolded last night.
18 people are now deceased at this time. The victims at the just-in-time establishment, 7 people are deceased there, 1 female and 6 males, all from an apparent gunshot wound. Victims at the Schmegley's Billiards, 8 are deceased. 7 males inside the establishment, 1 male outside of the establishment. Again, also apparent gunshot wounds. Multiple people were transferred to area hospitals, Central Maine Medical Center, St. Mary's, and Maine Medical Center. 3 people that were transferred to those hospitals are deceased, for a total of 18 people deceased at this time.
Colonel Williams there with the Maine State Police, kind of just recapping the situation. And as you mentioned, that was 12 hours ago that we last heard from them.
Which, you know, Don Karen can comment on. It feels like much longer than that at that point. But, you know, that was a moment we were hinging on coming into today. That would be our first real look at what facts police can share with us and are able to share with us, and that we can pass on to you. So we certainly got a lot of information there and so many more questions. And as we're learning tonight, it will continue tomorrow.
And, you know, our Don Kerrigan kind of talked about how he had just heard from the public safety spokesperson, Shannon Moss, which we personally back here in the newsroom had not heard from her since 7:52 when police were at that scene in Bowdoin. But he heard from her that the search continues tonight in Lisbon. And we want to bring in Sam Rogers, who you were just at the scene in Bowdoin. Thanks for joining us now here. Now that they've cleared that scene in Bowdoin, it sounds like they're continuing the search in Lisbon, and you and Hannah Cumler were there last night.
Yeah, and in Lisbon, a hotbed, I don't know if that's the right word to describe it, but like we were saying on the air up until almost 4 a.m. Early yesterday morning, it was a constant just stream of cruisers driving by. It would kind of be like, you know, 1 or 2 just flying right by. So we were posted right by Lisbon High School, in between Lisbon Falls and Lisbon Town Center, and that was kind of the mile stretch that was blocked off. And David Guilford was there today reporting that some of those roads were being reopened in the past number of hours. But it would be, you know, really quiet, and then 6 cars drive right by. And we were looking through, you know, just, you know, Google Maps just to try to see what possible area they could be searching. And we were right by the Androscoggin River. I had no idea how close the river was to the back of Lisbon High School. And we saw a number of tactical trucks set up behind the school. Going into the gym, we could see into the gym, and it looked like they were preparing for something. Of course, no, we can't really speculate as to what they were preparing for, but there was folks stationed all over. And you're looking at video, this is what we had from last night. That was our location. That mobile gas station is really where we saw it was cruisers and multiple police officers kind of on both sides blocking that fork in the road. But again, seemed like there was probably a 2-hour stretch that every 15 minutes we would see multiple cruisers with the lights on driving by, and then slowly kind of come on back. And as we reported last night, that helicopter that was circulating, we had a lot of folks on social media reach out to us looking at like the flight logs and the capabilities of that technology, searching land and the water. And it's a very wooded area, like a lot of these places in Maine. And I think what I've noticed is being in all 3 of these locations in the past however many hours, it's very an interesting just geographical difference, not in terms of the physical mileage distance, but Lewiston, second biggest city in the state. So Bowdoin, where we were tonight, and I tried to explain it a few hours ago, it was like a massive farm. That's really how big that property truly was. And then Lisbon, a more kind of in-between type community where there's more homes around, but still a lot of woods and that river. And again, just so many different areas for officers to search.
And we've said it all day long today, and you kind of touched on it, what you saw last night, what you saw earlier today in Lewiston, what you saw tonight in Bowdoin. These are all very active scenes.
Yes. Yeah, and that was, I tried to, I don't know if I did the best job trying to explain that from Bowdoin about how maybe the number of law enforcement officers is similar to what we've seen, but I know Zach said it right afterwards about how this is not normal for our state, and you could feel that intensity. Like I said, when we would see cruisers flying by us, going above the speed limit, we thought, oh, this is it, they have something. But of course, with all this information coming in from all these different kinds of sources, and we know our law enforcement agencies are pursuing everything to the fullest of their capabilities. So that was definitely something you could see was different, again, in this non-normal situation. And something else that I brought up, and the two of you know this in the field, a lot of times when you go on a scene, an officer will come up to you and give you a, hey, like heads up, here's kind of what's going on. The officers were really focused on looking out for our safety. Right when Hannah Cumler and I got to Lisbon Falls, they immediately told us, if I were you, I would back up. This is not a safe area. We heard other reports, law enforcement calling it a quote danger zone. Again, that stretch where you're looking right now. So that was where the circulation of the efforts was last night. I know David Guilford again said that those roads were reopened. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not still looking in those roads or in those areas. But again, there was a different feel, of course, with the 18 deaths. Something that these law enforcement agencies train for, never want to have to kind of go out and execute and try to find this suspect. But it definitely was that different intensity. Even in Lewiston today, one one cruiser would come up to the bowling alley where the first location of the shooting last night, and everyone's eyes are glued onto the attention. And if I can just for another second just give another compliment to law enforcement looking out for our safety. We talked to, I believe it was you two, when we had a man come from over the train tracks. We didn't know what was going on. We look into the street, and the officer that was posted across from the bowling alley near us walked over in a ready position, so to speak, and all the reporters from all the news outlets that were next to us looked back, and just a gentleman just walked down. He had something in his hand, like a bag of clothes or a bundle of clothes, and out of nowhere we see other law enforcement officers from different agencies coming out of the woods. So they were checking our backs, and so they were behind us. So if you can think of, if you try to imagine at home, train tracks, a line of about 15 to 20 reporters, street, and then that scene, that bowling alley, there was law enforcement watching our backs from behind. And of course, that's a preventative measure, but they were there right away. By the time we were able to look and see what was going on, they were there taking care of the situation, and one of those officers did escort that gentleman down the train tracks, was trying to talk him out of maybe hey, don't be involved in this situation.
Don't walk through this
another neighborhood
scene,
Yeah, especially just because everyone, whether it's members of the Lewiston community all over the state, ourselves, even as folks that were on the ground in the field today, you're always a little uneasy. And so again, when one cruiser drives by, you think, is this it? And then when one person walks by, you think, get a little hesitant.
Well, I do think that's part of the unnerving part that continues now for going into a second night of what could happen next, because this person who was accused of doing something awful in our community is still out there and is considered armed and dangerous. So certainly, I think there is, for all of us, especially those communities that are specifically under shelter in place for another night, unnerving of not knowing what could be next.
Yeah, and again, going back to just how quiet Lewiston was today, again, weather-wise, the three of us talked about it. Couldn't be more of a perfect fall day to go to Kennedy Park and play basketball. And like I said, this was around 3 o'clock this afternoon. 3 people playing basketball, and that was really it. A lot of people, and again, as you've seen on big scenes, there's a lot of people that will typically come to watch and try to observe and see what's going on. Not a whole lot of that. We did speak with a mother from the area who lives kind of next of the street over from where we were. So she did come down to check, has a lot of friends that worked in that plaza where the bowling alley was, so just wanted to kind of see what was going on. But there wasn't a whole lot of folks mingling around Lewiston today, which I think was a really big indicator of how serious that shelter-in-place order was taken. And another thing we did report on, a lot of local shelters for unhoused neighbors really stepping up when a lot of businesses closed today. The Dunkin' Donuts, the Cumberland Farms in the city were all closed, but those shelters wanted to be open to provide a safe place, because they said it was frankly terrifying for some of those Mainers last night, being told to stay inside, and they didn't have that opportunity.
They didn't have a home. Right.
And it speaks quite a bit to, you mentioned the police having your backs and the police saying, I wouldn't go there if I were you, it's dangerous. All of these scenes have been dangerous. We know the shelter in place is happening for a reason, because there is this man out there, Robert Card, that police are looking for, and they believe that he is armed and dangerous, and they have not caught him yet. And so he really could be anywhere at this point. He could be anywhere around you. But I think recognizing the fact that the media isn't there to be in the way. At least we personally are not trying to be in the way, but we're trying to get the word out. And I think they've appreciated that people have paid attention to this shelter in place.
Yes, absolutely. And that was a comment we did receive is we want to let, regardless of the situation, especially in a case like this, we do not want to be in the way at all. We are just trying to, again, pass those public messages of shelter in place in these communities. Here's where police are telling you to try to avoid, this road is closed and whatnot. And I think they've kind of understood that. Just again in Lewiston, in Bowdoin, and in Lisbon Falls, in the Lisbon area, they know that people care. I mean, how many hours have we been on straight? What is it, 26, 27 hours straight? So clearly, Mainers want to know what is going on. I think from what we've kind of gathered is those folks that are there with us, they know that they're protecting us while also trying to protect everybody else in those communities.
Sam Rogers, always good to get your perspective on this. I know you've been in the thick of it these past few days, so thank you.
We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
We'll be here through the night too, as long as we need to be. Luke, our producer, do you think that it's worth revisiting that timeline of events that happened that Zach Blanchard had put together for us? Is that sure?
Right, so we'll just need a second to get that. And to Sam's point of that's why we're here, is because of the public safety part. We in this room with this group of journalists that we're fortunate to work with, we take that part of our job very seriously, and that is our responsibility to serve the public with information, and be it as limited as it is sometimes. We want to be able to provide you with what we do know and what we don't know, and right now is that there is still that threat out there.
Yes, and to that point, we have had many viewers reaching out to us, many friends, many family saying, hey, this was on Facebook, why aren't you reporting this? Or, hey, we know this information, why aren't you reporting this? And we are doing our very best back here to confirm everything that we can. We're not going on air with just things that we're reading on social media. We do have a standard that we want to set for all of you at home, because we don't want to have to backtrack. This is a very serious event, and we want you to be as informed as possible on what's going on.
So to that point, we do have Zach Blanchard compiled some of the data we received today about the timeline of what things looked like last night, and he walks us through some of that.
It all started around 6:56 Wednesday night when police received reports of a shooting at Spare Time Recreation Bowling Alley. Then just minutes later at 7:08 p.m., dispatchers received 911 calls about a shooter at Schmenge's Bar and Grill 4 miles away. Video showed people running from the scenes. Less than an hour later, at 8:06, police released this photo of the shooter from surveillance footage, walking into Spare Time with an assault rifle. Later, sharing this picture of a white Subaru they believe he was driving. At 8:09, nearby Bates College was placed on lockdown. After that, Auburn and Lewiston residents were ordered to shelter in place around 8:30 as hundreds of officers started a manhunt. Meantime, loved ones of the victims gathered outside of Central Maine Medical Center.
Friends are here, we're all waiting, and we've heard nothing. They won't tell us if he's alive, if he's in critical condition, if he's passed. They won't tell us anything.
At 9:26, police got a call identifying the shooter as 40-year-old Robert Card of Bowdoin. At 9:56, officers were notified they found the white Subaru belonging to Card at a boat launch in Lisbon, but not him. Then at 11:52, Lisbon residents were ordered to shelter in place. Police holding a press conference warning the public of the danger.
Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way.
A reunification center was opened at Auburn Middle School, where some got good news and others got the news they feared.
Still in shock. I think we're all in shock. I think us as a community are.
Through the night, police continued their search. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Bowdoin residents were ordered to shelter in place. Then at 10:30 Thursday morning, police confirmed 18 people were killed and 13 others were injured in the shooting. But the search continues for the suspect.
This is a dark day for Maine. I know it's hard for us to think about healing when our hearts are broken. But I want every person in Maine to know that we will heal.
Zach Blanchard there piecing together the information we got today from a timeline. It was pretty much exactly 12 hours ago that press briefing was held at Lewiston City Hall, where we heard from the governor, where she said it was a dark day in Maine. And that's the latest in terms of how the events unfolded. Over really a very short amount of time. A lot happened. And that was something that we've commented on, that it seems like a surprising number, that it was just a 45-minute window from the first to the last of the patients transported from the scene to Central Maine Medical Center. So much happened very quickly. Sam Rogers was with us just a few minutes ago talking about that the search continues, and he was at multiple locations today where the search is being concentrated. Part of the story with this is that he also mentioned was so many communities were quiet today.
Yes.
There was nobody on the road. Businesses were closed, streets were closed, schools were closed. And that paints part of the picture of what we are all going through right now. And I think it helps give a little solace and peace to the fact that we are all going through this. We are all experiencing this together to a degree. So Ann Baldridge today hit the road for us to look at what that looks like in a few communities on just a devastating day like this.
I'm here at the LL Bean store in Freeport, where they are closed today, and the sign on the door behind me says that they're closed due to the tragedy that occurred last night in Lewiston, and also just to be cautious. They are just one of the many closures across the state today. More than 200 institutions, including several schools in Maine, were closed Thursday after at least 18 people were reportedly killed in mass shootings on Wednesday night. Central Maine Community College, Bates College, and the University of Southern Maine Lewiston were all closed as well. Many local establishments are also closed Thursday due to the tragedy in Lewiston and out of the abundance of caution. We'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more. In Freeport and Baldridge, News Center, Maine.
And you mentioned, Brian, a lot of those communities closed today, but many of them still planning on being closed tomorrow.
Right.
We still have this shelter in place for Androscoggin County as a whole, also Bowdoin, Lisbon, Lewiston, very much still under this shelter in place while there are still active scenes in those places.
Yeah, because a lot of the decision to close or not open or close for a little bit was based on kind of the anticipation that the shelter in place would be lifted,
right.
Or pending that being lifted, and as of tonight, it's not. It still exists.
And I don't think many people expected this to still be ongoing now, this many hours later. Again, that search continues for Robert Card, 40 years old, from Bowdoin. He is the man police believed opened fire at Speartime Recreation and at Schmeggy's Bar and Grill, the pool hall there in Lewiston. And we have 350 plus law enforcement officials that are involved in this. We know the FBI is involved in this search. In fact, we were talking with Zach Blanchard a little bit earlier, who had heard that specifically members from that team that went in to find the Tsarnaev brothers after the Boston Marathon bombings were here in Maine helping with this search.
Which we know was we never want to compare, but it was a similar situation in the sense that it was, they're over here, we're getting a report they're there, we have to check this neighborhood, which is to a degree what is happening, I think, on a larger geographic scale in Maine right now.
A much more wooded area, more water here. Definitely a lot of complications here. And want to talk about the fact that the White House obviously has been briefed on all of this. We heard from them even last night that they were monitoring this situation, and President Joe Biden has ordered flags at half-staff nationwide. We know here in Maine, statewide, flags will be lowered for the next 5 days. We also heard from Vice President Kamala Harris a little earlier today.
Last night, Lewiston became yet another community torn apart by senseless gun violence. Once again, routine gatherings, this time at a bowling alley and a restaurant, have been turned into scenes of horrific carnage. Doug and I mourn for those who were killed. We pray for those who were injured and grieve with so many whose lives are forever changed and impacted by what happened. The Biden-Harris administration will continue to provide full support to local authorities. And as we gather details, we must continue to speak truth about the moment we are in. In our country today, the leading cause of death of American children is gun violence. Gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country. And let us be clear, it does not have to be this way.
Vice President Kamala Harris there speaking about the shooting right here in Lewiston. Governor Janet Mills was also commenting that last night President Joe Biden stepped out of his state dinner with the head of Australia, who is visiting, to call her and address what's going on there as well. About 4.5 hours ago, there was another briefing in Lewiston City Hall where we saw a number of our members of our delegation there, including Congressman Jared Golden. In Lewiston, grew up in the area, very familiar with this area as well. First time we specifically saw him speak, he had issued a statement obviously last night, but got back into town for this event. And had some comments about what unfolded that jumped off the page, I think, for a lot of folks.
Right.
So we want to take a listen to those.
Because of a false confidence that our community was above this, and that we could be in full control, among many other misjudgments, I have opposed efforts to ban deadly weapons of war like the assault rifle used to carry out this crime. The time has now come for me to take responsibility for this failure, which is why I now call on the United States Congress to ban assault rifles like the one used by the sick perpetrator of this mass killing in my hometown of Lewiston, Maine. For the good of my community, I will work with any colleague to get this done in the time that I have left in Congress.
And Congressman asking for forgiveness for not doing enough is what we heard from him. And then, of course, Senator Susan Collins was also at that podium. And after Congressman Golden had said what he said, a lot of reporters, we have a lot of reporters from national networks, a lot of reporters kind of peppered Senator Collins with some follow-up questions there of why aren't you voting for some of this legislation?
That press event took a very political turn very quickly, as opposed to specifically addressing kind of the immediacy of what's going on right now, which I think perhaps the local media was looking for. And I think the national and international media was definitely pushing on the gun legislation questions. Senator Collins found herself talking a lot about the high-capacity magazines, the red and yellow flag laws, the bump stocks, but a lot of pressure on what comes next in Washington for this. But Congressman Jared Golden obviously saying right there he will work with anybody.
Which I think in all of these situations, again, it's hard to lump us in with sort of this group of mass shootings, but I think every time we have one of these, people often go back to the politicians and say, what now?
Right, what's next?
Right.
Because we do. We naturally turn to them for guidance in any topic of whenever we have a crisis. If it's a massive storm that caused a electrical grid crisis, we turn to them and say, what are we going to do? So I think that's the normal reaction. But just a response from Congressman Golden that jumped out to a lot of us.
Certainly, an interesting comment from him, and good to see him too after all this time to be back in Lewiston. We want to switch gears a little bit and move back to Central Maine Medical Center, where we know 14 critically injured people were brought last night. That's what we were hearing from medical staff there. And we have a reporter, Brooke Griffin, who has a little bit more from CMMC for us.
Here at Central Maine Medical Center, the entrances and exits have been heavily guarded the entire day. These officers standing out front wearing protective gear with long guns, speaking to everybody that comes up to that entrance before letting them through. It's been about 24 hours since police say 40-year-old Robert Card walked into a bowling alley and a restaurant and opened fire, killing 18 people and injuring 13. Here at Central Maine Medical Center, they began receiving an influx of trauma patients quickly. A spokesperson telling us they got 15 patients within that first hour. Of those, 1 was transferred to another hospital, 2 were sent home, 8 were admitted, and 3, unfortunately, passed away. The hospital did go into a lockdown at the time of that shooting, which is procedure when during any nearby shooting scene. The hospital is still under a lockdown as long as the shelter-in-place order is implemented, but they are still taking walk-in and emergency patients as long as they go through security first. Leaders here saying they've never seen anything like this before, but their staff was ready.
We have an incredible team, and they train for this. We perform drills around the clock, or not around the year. We had multiple specialties engaged and involved. Our orthopedic surgeons, our urologists, our vascular surgeons, of course our trauma surgeons and our emergency department physicians. We brought in about 50 additional individuals, caregivers, doctors, providers, nurses, respiratory therapists to help out with this. And they were able to very expertly and compassionately take care of those patients.
Of those 8 patients that were admitted here to this hospital, they tell us that 5 of them are currently listed in stable condition, while 3 of them are currently listed at critical. Of course, this is something that we'll be following, and all new information we'll get out to you as soon as we can. In Lewiston, Brooke Griffin, News Center, Maine.
We appreciate our colleagues helping us out with this tonight, coming from all over the nation to help us cover this massive manhunt
We've talked about how that's what's happened with law enforcement, and we heard that's what happened with our medical professionals, that people just showed up to help, and a little, kind of behind the curtain of our world, that's what happens in our world. When there is a massive crisis in a community, we team up and help each other out and send crews, because there's a lot to cover and a lot of time that's needed to make it all happen.
Want to go back to an interview. Our digital producer, Griffin Stockford, actually had a conversation with a man named Chad Hopkins, who works at Apple Valley Golf Course. I believe he's the owner of Apple Valley Golf Course, and he was at Spare Time Recreation last night when this all happened, and he spoke a little bit about how difficult it can be to kind of keep reliving this as this manhunt continues. Let's hear a little bit of that.
I've tried to not watch the news over the last handful of hours, because I think if I wasn't involved, I would be much more interested in watching the news about this. But where we kind of lived it and felt like we escaped it, every second of the news that I watch right now, and I'm hanging on to every single word they say. So God forbid they call just-in-time bowling alley spare time. If they mention a name and they say it incorrectly, or if their numbers are off or whatever from what I witnessed really happened, then I get a little defensive. Not to mention the trigger. Every second of it is just triggering me. It's like that PTSD situation here. And all I'm trying to do is reach out to as many as possible in my very large, growing family, Apple Valley family, bowling alley family community, that are all reaching out and giving their condolences. And, they all have a million questions. And I'm trying to give each person, enough information so that they're at least, maybe it'll help them bring their blood pressure down a little bit and breathe a little bit easier or whatever. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
And we certainly appreciate that perspective there. Obviously, none of us can imagine what any of them went through in those scenes. And on that note, we spoke with at least 3 different behavioral health specialists throughout last night and today on air here, and many of them saying, please do step away from the news. You don't have to stick with us. We certainly understand you need a break. A lot of people need a break, and a lot of this is, putting the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help others. You've got to keep yourself in check. You have to be able to step back and reevaluate what's going on. And we do have a number that we have had all day long, all night long here. You can text or you can call 988. That is the Suicide and Crisis Helpline. And that's not just for people who are in immediate crisis right now. That's for anyone who wants to talk to a behavioral health specialist or just wants to talk about what's going on, maybe just unload a little bit.
Well, and that, to that point, this is unprecedented for Maine. This is new for all of us. Unless you had the unfortunate opportunity to live somewhere else through a mass shooting and then move to Maine, we haven't gone through this. So these mental health experts we've been talking with for the last 24 hours have been saying just that, of talk through this, process it. There are resources available for you. And again, that number on your screen is the other option. You can text support to 207-828-6622, and those resources will be sent right to your phone. But we have resources in our state who are trained to help in situations like this. And you know what? You're not alone if you call, because they say they've been busy. They have had a lot of calls coming in the last day.
And they expect to continue to have those calls as we learn more information, as we continue to watch as this manhunt for Robert Card continues. And again, just taking care of yourselves, taking care of your loved ones, check in with your neighbors. One of the pieces of advice we got from Greg Marley with NAMI Maine, National Alliance on Mental Illness there, he mentioned bake cookies. Maybe your teenager wants to help. Bake cookies.
That's
bring
a way
them
you can help.
to your first responders, or bring them to your neighbors who maybe aren't able to get to the grocery store right now.
Yes, and I think having each other's back goes a long way, and that's the other message we're hearing from a lot of folks, including the mayor of Lewiston just this morning, saying look out for each other, and that's how we're going to get through this. A lot of people are looking out for us right now. Just take a look at your screen for a moment. A lot of organizations and groups, athletic teams, things you are very familiar with on your screen now, just sharing a little love for us in Maine right now, and specifically in Lewiston. And this is just a small taste of what's out there. We know that you've been scrolling on your phone all day too, and likely seeing these as well, but you see a lot of those little hearts right where Lewiston is on the map. And that speaks volumes.
Seen a lot of that hashtag Lewiston Strong. I know a lot of friends and family members have been sharing that, kind of to keep the conversation going on social media if people want to search that hashtag. And the Boston Bruins, major team. They talked about in response to these events here in Lewiston, the Boston Bruins Foundation has even created a fund to benefit families of those affected, and they are pledging $100,000 into that fund, and they're hoping more and more people donate to that fund. And I know they were auctioning off player-signed sticks, so certainly a lot of different aspects moving into this, and a lot of, as you said, a lot of different organizations really paying attention.
Well, and to your comment a moment ago, what Greg from NAMI was telling us about maybe bake cookies to help out, doing whatever it is that you can to help is great. So if it's organizations pledging $100,000, that's wonderful. If it's you baking cookies with your kids and bringing it to the police station, that's great. And that can go such a long way in helping through this.
Certainly a situation no one in Lewiston expected to be in. No one wanted to be in. It's not a statistic we wanted to become a part of. But as you mentioned, we've heard from both the mayors of Lewiston and the mayor of Auburn, and both on the same team right now about
absolutely
how to move forward and how this has to happen together.
Right. We've talked about that we grew up here. We grew up around Lewiston. We're very familiar with it. And we've done the stories on the hopeful sign. But that's all I've had in my mind is when you drive over the bridge from Auburn into Lewiston, there is the hopeful sign on the mill on the right. And it's just so prominent in my mind right now, that image of like, okay, we have to look for the hope. We have to look through kind of just the shock and the pain of this. And again, we've been talking about resources that are available. The NAMI Maine hotline is on your screen right now. It's an 800 number, 464-5767. So again, just a number of resources available for you. And of course, those are all on the News of Maine website and our app for you to access anytime as well.
I want to make sure that we are not losing sight of the fact that 18 people killed, 13 injured, and we do at this point have confirmed some of who these victims were, and major members of their communities. So if we have that full screen, we can kind of go through that list again, starting with Trisha Aslin. She last night was bowling at Spare Time. We just heard from her friend there about kind of the incident that followed all of this, and Chad Hopkins, who we just heard from, mentioned she was a hard worker, a passionate community member, and a beloved friend. He knew her from golfing and bowling, and just you can tell a lot from that smile. And then Peyton Brewer Ross. We know Don Kerrigan mentioned him earlier tonight, worked at Bath Iron Works. Maine AFL-CIO actually put out a statement earlier. Our thoughts and prayers go out to family, friends, and co-workers of Machinists Local S6 member Peyton Brewer Ross. He was a new father, they say, loved by his community, something we are hearing a lot of. Ron Morin, another person that we know was killed last night. He was a softball umpire in the community. We're told he touched a lot of lives. A lot of people were drawn to him. We heard from a coworker and friend who said whenever we would reconnect, Ron always had a smile on his face and a huge hug to offer. Such a great person.
Hearing a lot of that. Great person, great human. And obviously, these were people who were out with friends and people they loved, enjoying camaraderie. Arthur Strout, also one of the victims that we've learned about, his wife Christy confirming that he died last night in these shootings. Bob Violette was a bowling league organizer. We know, obviously, there was a league going on there at Spare Time Recreation last night. It was a bowling alley. It was a Wednesday night. It was very busy. Bob leaves behind 5 children, we've learned. His cousin saying Arthur was a strong-willed person. He loved his kids. He loved his family and made sure he always put us, his family, first. There was never a doubt that he wouldn't take care of us, was the big message. Joshua Seal, upper right corner of your screen right there. His wife Elizabeth posting a message on Facebook today about him, using words like, "It still feels surreal," which, quite frankly, Elizabeth, you have a whole community behind you in that feeling, and we can't imagine what you're going through. For those who knew him, first and foremost, he was the world's best father to our 4 pups, is part of what she wrote. Not only was he an amazing father, he was a wonderful husband, my best friend, my soulmate. He was a wonderful boss, an incredible interpreter, a great friend, a loving son, brother, uncle, and grandson. These are our neighbors who lost their lives last night.
Yeah. Joseph Walker, we know, we spoke with his father, Leroy Walker. He's an Auburn City Councilor. Jack spoke with his father last night, and he was outside of the hospital waiting to hear what had happened to his son. He found out his son was not at the hospital, and so he just had that feeling that he was among those lost. And,
Joseph
and
was a manager at the second location at Semenges. And his father Leroy was saying he was telling Lester Holt today, he loved that bar, he loved the people who went there, and he would die for it. And he said, and that's what happened. So we have part of that conversation with Leroy.
Walker was shot to death at Semenges. Shot to death, but then he went into telling her that he died as a hero because he picked up a butcher knife from somewhere. He has all that stuff near the bar anyways. And he tried to go at the gunman to stop him from shooting anybody else. The gunman shot him twice through this.
Does it change your pain at all?
Oh.
Knowing that?
It made it worse. Yeah, it made it worse.
Just really, really difficult sound to listen to.
Well, you see the grief right on his face.
Right. And we've seen it on a lot of people's faces at the reunification place last night, the reunification center at Auburn Middle School. A lot of families getting great news, a lot of families getting horrific news. And also on that list of victims, we know Brian McFarland was among those killed. We have not been able to add him to the full screen just yet, but we know he was among those killed, and certainly his family mourning his loss as well.
If that feels overwhelming, which it does for us to talk about these neighbors who have lost their lives, there are 10 more to be identified. And we don't have a timeline for when that will happen, but we will be doing the same thing we are as we learn about who they are and the life they lived, and we will always do our best to honor what they leave behind in a tragedy like this.
And we know Robert Card facing charges right now, 8 counts of murder, because there are just 8 victims who have been identified. They're still working to identify the other 10, and hopefully they have made some progress on that throughout the day. We just haven't heard an update from officials on that.
I would imagine they are waiting until they can do another grouping of identifications and confirmation there. And police were saying they expect more charges for Robert Card as the identifications are positively made. So right now that is at 8 counts of murder.
We certainly thank you for continuing to join us for this continuing coverage of this massive manhunt for 40-year-old Robert Card. Might be worth bringing up his photo again for anyone who hasn't seen it in a while. Just, 350 plus law enforcement agencies looking for this man that they consider armed and dangerous. The search continues on land. It continues in water. We heard from the U.S. Coast Guard earlier today that Robert Card owns a 15-foot boat, and that is unaccounted for. So they're kind of exploring all avenues at this point. We saw them earlier at a home in Bowdoin, owned by, they believe, either Robert Card or someone in his family.
And as Don Kerrigan was telling us live, the manhunt is expected to continue tonight and into tomorrow. So that is what we will keep bringing you the latest on. That's why we're here, is to give you the information as we get it.
Our Chris Costa and Zach Blanchard are about to rejoin the desk here, but before we get back to them, Chris Costa has certainly been busy all day today as well, talking with people, and we want to bring you one of those interviews now.
Concerned about my side.
Sorry, I was wanting to ask as a human being. That's just Are you, so do you want to tell me? Were you on campus when any of these events happened?
No, I was off campus when I heard about the first reports that there was an active shooter in the Lewiston area, and have been just monitoring the situation since.
How are you feeling right now?
I am feeling all of the things that people feel when their community has been attacked. I am somewhat in shock, even though we've been saying that these things can happen anywhere, and they often happen in smaller communities. And Maine has just been lucky for the most part to not have an attack like this. Of course, this is an attack on a scale that is shocking by any measure, but also concerned. I'm concerned about all of my students and my friends who work at Bates and in the community, and hoping that they are staying safe and that they are getting what they need. And again, this is unfolding right now. We don't know who the victims are, and so just kind of holding my breath at this point.
Professor, you find yourself in a very probably unique position where a large portion, the majority of your career has been dedicated to researching these exact types of incidents. What are you kind of coming to terms with now in your head, given all of the research you've done about mass shootings and one happening right in your own backyard?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes through your head. Obviously, most people who are following the story have seen the pictures of the suspect with the weapon, and people will draw conclusions about the type of weapon without it being confirmed yet. So I don't want to comment on what type of weapon it was, but it sure looks like some sort of a rifle that can do a lot of damage. And we've done research on the types of guns that wind up causing the most casualties in these types of events. We know that there are certain types of laws that don't necessarily restrict people's freedoms, but also can be helpful in preventing these types of attacks. And so the first, reaction, I think, is frustration, really. Frustration that we've been talking about this. We've been trying to put out information about what we know so far, and we know more and more every day about why these attacks happen, how these attacks happen, and what type of policies are seemingly effective. And it does not seem as if there's any traction to get anything done. The two opposing factions arguing past one another, and we find ourselves in a position where now we're attacked at our own home, and that feels personal. And so there's frustration, there's sadness, a little bit of anger as well.
That was Michael Roque there speaking to Chris Costa. That was actually last night, so some of that information is dated, but the message remains the same all this time later. That manhunt continues tonight for Robert Card. He's 40 years old, of Bowdoin. Earlier this evening, there was a very active scene in Bowdoin with police from all over New England, more than 350 officers in the state right now. They surrounded a home in Bowdoin.
Yeah, and it was... I don't want to say false hope, but I know everybody was excited, right? It was, you were glued to the television hoping that the home that the police had such a strong presence at, and so many, journalists were at, hoping this was going to be the house that he was going to be in, and that they would be able to find him, there'd be an end to this. This is still now, so many hours later, open-ended, still so many people on edge because he's still out there, because we don't know where he is, because we still have that such an important unanswered question, still doesn't have an answer to it. So obviously the hope was that he was going to be in that house. Alex Haskell has been there all night long, and we're hoping for something with a resolution to it, and we don't have it at least yet. So Alex, how did things go there?
Hi, Lee. So it was about 2 hours ago when law enforcement came over from the house over to where we are and basically told us that the scene was over. There was nothing left. But leading up to that, we know that it was anything but that. It was a very active scene here. And I just want to kind of explain, the situation that we saw and the moments that, led up to the eventual scene being cleared. So we are along Meadow Road right now in Bowdoin, and it's rural Maine. There are fields on either side of this road, and it's a narrow road, and there are dozens of other reporters and photographers here, and so they were parked on both sides of this road, making this road so much smaller, and we are all gathered here in a driveway of a neighbor. So we were all here kind of observing this road being blocked off because we were originally here as a search warrant was being executed at a home somewhat related to Robert Card. And then as the night went on, law enforcement came over to us, members of the media, and told us to actually turn our lights off, lights that we're using right now, because it is a dangerous situation. So we all turned our lights off and we're watching this house, which is behind me across the street here. It's hard to see just because it's dark now, but it's down the road a little ways, but we would be able to see it right where we are if it was light out. So we saw armored vehicles, 2 of them. One was at least from the New Hampshire State Police, drive up to this home, and they approached this home by foot. There were dozens of armored law enforcement officers. They had a canine team. There's a helicopter circling this home. They were shining spotlights on this home in the windows. And then eventually we heard police speaking from a bullhorn. I'm going to read you some of the things that they said. They said, "Robert Card, we know that you're in there. Come out with your hands up with nothing in them. We won't hurt you." And they were instructing Robert Card, who they thought was in this home, to come out, stand in the driveway. But from what we could see, Robert Card never came out. There is a little bit of a hill blocking part of this home, so it was hard for us to really see everything that was happening. As I mentioned, canine team, armed officers, helicopter. There was a lot happening here in this one spot. And eventually, law enforcement came back up this road, cleared out, and it was, from what we know, unsuccessful. But it was a really intense moment here where we thought this manhunt might be over. There was a lot of hope here, but we realized that this is just something that is continuing here as the search continues. But the scene here is quiet. It's dark, as you can see behind me. And that is it right now. Lee and Zach, I'll toss things back to you.
Yeah, Alex, you've been on the scene. We should note that video we were showing is from earlier. As you can see behind Alex, it is cleared out, but you can hear in the background there just the sheer number of reporters. And Alex, I want you to stay with us. I know you were speaking to some residents in the area earlier, some neighbors. You walked us through the situation that happened at the home there, but this is an area where, of course, it's a small town in Maine that the Card family is known, and you spoke to some neighbors there that spoke about the family, right?
Exactly. So this road a little while ago was obviously blocked off because of what was happening at the home. So folks who live past this roadblock, they couldn't get to their homes. So they were kind of parked behind us here along the road waiting to get by. And I chatted with an older gentleman who was with his dog. They normally go out on drives in the evenings. And he was just hanging out waiting to be allowed through to go back home. And he was telling me that he knows the Card family and that he's just shocked by this because they are extremely nice people. He could never have imagined, as so many of us, not even knowing this family, this could ever happen. So he was in shock, and nothing like this ever happens here. So he was just really trying to process that as he was sitting here. And he wasn't the only one. He was the only one that we chatted with, but we saw other folks just kind of sitting and waiting to be allowed through for law enforcement to clear out.
Understandably so, and we do want to note that we did hear from Maine Department of Public Safety spokesperson Shannon Moss that the search has gone back to focusing on that Lisbon area where Card's car was found at a boat ramp there, but really no no other information at this point. They went to that house. They identified him on the loudspeaker. They said, "Come out. We know you're in there." Those kinds of lines. But Shannon Moss said that that's standard procedure, regardless of whether or not they know he's actually in there. And they admitted that that they knew he might not be in there.
And that's, and that is protocol, and that is, there's such a thirst for information, right? We all want to know, where is he, when are they going to find him? And so I've covered standoffs before, assuming you have as well. I've seen that times where they'll announce you're there for 4 hours. They're like, we know you're in there. Then they go in and the person's not there. So, but while they're searching, and then they're certainly following their beliefs that someone is there, that's how it all works. And we got our hopes up, if you will, that there'd be an end to this, and there wasn't. So we will see where we go to
and
next.
that protocol is important because they train for something like this. Mental health is a big factor in this case. NBC News has been reporting, we've been reporting that Katie Card, the sister-in-law of Robert Card, said that he was experiencing some kind of acute mental illness episode just before the shooting, that they were trying to address it, trying to get help, and obviously that wasn't the case. So he's armed, he's dangerous. They're not just going to go into that home right away. They have to follow that protocol.
You heard all those voices behind Alex Haskell just now out in Bowdoin as we hit the top of the 11 o'clock hour. So the 11 o'clock news happening for stations all across the country, at least on the East Coast time zone, and that includes national media. There's media here from everywhere. This story. Our state has the eyes of the nation, which is still weird to say out loud, but it's true, and there's a lot of interest here.
That there is. News Center Maine's Jack Mohamed is standing by. He has been at the original scene there in Lewiston for throughout the day. And Jack, you've seen the national media, and you even spoke to NBC's Lester Holt, who anchored nightly news from Lewiston earlier this evening.
That's right, Leah and Zach. Well, unfortunately, as we've been talking about, Maine has taken the national spotlight for the wrong reasons. A gunman taking the lives of 18 people here in Lewiston in 2 locations, one in a bowling alley and one at Schmenge's bar right behind me here, where we've been standing with for the better part of the day. And as you said, national media has flooded through here, and as our News Center Maine crews have been here at different locations, we've seen various media outlets here from pretty much all over the world. But if you got a chance to catch the NBC Nightly News this evening, you saw that Lester Holt and I interviewed a very common source. It was that Auburn City Councilor, Leroy Walker, about how he's coming to terms with losing his son. I talked with NBC's Lester Holt about that experience and also the responsibility that we have as journalists when it comes to reporting on mass shootings like this in our country.
You're keeping a sharp eye
in the midst of heartbreak, anger, confusion. 18 dead, 13 injured. A gunman still on the loose. NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt says coming to the scene where Maine's most devastating shooting was a decision that needed to be made.
There were a lot of compelling things about this story that made it an instant national story.
Joining us for a sit-down conversation, Lester Holt tells us the rise in mass shootings in America is a feeling that is always shocking.
They're among the hardest for me personally to report.
Some of the worst things of humanity that we encounter here, it makes you sick to your stomach. What do you tell yourself as a journalist when approaching these situations?
That it's all about people. Imperative that we bring compassion to our reporting, that we provide a listening ear.
And that compassion comes into play for us journalists. When speaking with Auburn City Councilor Leroy Walker.
If you had my gut right now, I feel like I'm squashed with a vice. My neck and the back of my head feels like there's a vice squashing it the other way.
Our news crews first spoke to Leroy at the midnight hour the day of the tragedy. And at that time, he had not heard from his son since the time of the shooting. His son, a manager at Schmenge's bar in Lewiston, the location where 8 people were shot and killed.
When I wake up to the true facts, that my son is dead, and I know he's dead. I know it as well as I know. I'm standing here telling you because he's not here.
Joey Walker, his son, killed in the shooting.
You know, he's devastated. He's 14 hours he was trying to find out if his son was dead or alive. These are important stories to tell because you look at them and you think that could be us, that could be me.
Lester Holt says after decades of covering tragedies,
it's not a measure of a city or of a region. It's just something that happened in that particular place, not because of that place. At least that's my experience.
You can only focus on silver linings in one devastating black hole in Maine's history. And oftentimes, since we've been reporting this for the better part of at least 30 or more hours now at this point, Lee and Zach, something that we've been telling ourselves in the newsroom, at least I've been trying to preach this a little bit, is that at the root of our job here in journalism at such horrible and tragic times in our community like this, we have to remember that our job is public service. And part of that public service is being able to constantly tell our audience something that makes them smarter, something that makes them feel safer. You watching at home should feel safer watching us, knowing that we're bringing you that information. Part of the reason why we've been going on air so much is because we do have a gunman still on the loose, that suspected gunman that police are looking for, Robert Card, still at large, still trying to track him down, and that's why we've been going through with these updates constantly as we stand here.
Yeah, Jack, it broke my heart when you spoke with that gentleman last night, and then to follow up today and hear how that story ended. I mean, that's as real as it gets, right? I mean, this is poor man is heartbroken.
Yeah, and we continue to hear those stories over and over again of all the families who, right when this happened, went to Central Maine Medical Center. You saw them outside the doors there, eventually going to Auburn to the reunification center. Some people walking away with good news that their loved ones survived. Others hearing the news they feared the most. And our thoughts are certainly with them. I believe we have Matthew Torres, who is helping us from our sister station. He's live outside of Spare Time now. Matthew, I believe you also have some new names to tell us, some new victims that we are learning about tonight.
Yeah, we are able to confirm through one family member that 2 victims here at the bowling alley who died here last night were Bill Young, 43 years old, and his son, Aaron Young, who just turned 14 years old. Now this, we were able to confirm through Bill's brother, a Maryland man who flew in this morning to be with family. At first, they couldn't get a hold of the family whatsoever, and they were able to finally get that information confirmed when he tells me that state troopers went to their home and finally delivered that tragic news. He was telling me that his nephew Aaron was a member of that youth bowling league here. And eventually, gunshots, of course, erupted. And even though he doesn't know the full details of what happened inside that bowling alley, he is confident, knowing who his brother was, Bill, that he probably did everything he could to protect his son, who again just turned 14 years old. Again, we are confirming this information, and I know we have been careful throughout the evening as far as the names that we were able to put out there. But not only was Rob Young did confirm this information to us, but the widow of Bill, as well as Bill's father, aware that he did that interview with us. And he was able to share photos of both Bill and Aaron. Hopefully we can get that up to you guys fairly soon. But again, 2 more victims that we know of here at the bowling alley last night. Where currently the scene, as you can tell, is still blocked off. Police have been here throughout really more than 24 hours now. And if anything, though, it's really been a distressing scene for a lot of the residents here. Their number one question here is, when is the suspect going to get caught? They want to feel that relief, finally breathe a sigh of relief, whatever that looks like, because they know moving forward, their lives, the community, it's never going to be the same. They just want to feel safe being back at home. And the fact that it's been so quiet here made one neighbor I spoke to quite emotional. How would you describe what the neighborhood is like now?
I've never seen this place this way. It's quiet. I knew people who were there, but they are safe now. And the police try to support as much as they can. We hope everybody else is safe and we can find him.
Safe. I think that's what people are wanting to feel tonight. Interestingly, the neighbors who live on the street next to us, they say they didn't hear any gunshots whatsoever. They did see people scrambling, running away from the scene. In fact, one other neighbor took us to his backyard. We were able to see a different angle of this bowling alley, and it was somewhat of a quiet scene too. Again, the investigation continues and likely all taking place inside that bowling alley. But again, tonight we were able to confirm 2 more names, Bill Young and his son, Aaron Young, who just turned 14 years old, according to his family, among the victims who died here at the bowling alley. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Hi, Matthew Torres from our sister station. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you helping us out here. And Zach, as you mentioned, we have kind of reached out to our family in the Tegna company to get some extra bodies on hand. This is obviously consuming our newsroom and our state, and we want to be able to provide this constant 24-hour, no commercial coverage for you guys, and we need more people to do that. And so we appreciate Matthew being here. You know, this is Zach. Quite literally, you know, the whole thing is a nightmare. But as soon as, you know, we heard that there was a youth bowling league there, been waiting to hear, you know, praying, please no kids. And so for Matthew to tell us that, you know, there's, I believe, our first child that we've learned about, Aaron Young, 14 years old, who went bowling with his dad, right? Bill Young, who's 43.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is Aaron right here. I know this is a little bit haphazard, but we want to make sure we share his photo with you as quickly as possible. A 14-year-old who was at that bowling alley with his dad, a night after work for his dad of hanging out with the kids, just enjoying time together, and this horrific tragedy. So.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do I take my own kids bowling, you know, on a random Wednesday just to spend some time together? And this is just, you know, that one hits. They all hit close to home. They're all awful. And yeah.
And speaking of this impact on families, on kids, on parents that are continuing to watch this coverage unfold, a number of schools continue to announce that they are not having classes, of course, in the Lewiston-Auburn area, but we are also just getting word tonight from Portland Public Schools that they are working to continue to monitor the Lewiston events. I'm just reading this from Twitter right now. If police give all clear by Friday morning, we will reopen, but if needed, they are prepared rather to close school again on Friday. So they will update by 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and South Portland sent a similar message out earlier tonight. All those schools did not have school today, and then tomorrow we'll see what happens. Full disclosure, my kids aren't going to school tomorrow, whether they're school or not. So, you know, until Robert Card is found, they're uneasy. This is stuff they wanted to talk about it when we got home today. And, you know, we talked to Greg Marley from NAMI intensively over the last 24 hours. I feel like he lived here for us and was such a huge resource, and spent a lot of time about how to talk to your kids. They're not going to be able to avoid this. We're not able to avoid this, so they know what's going on. And so we talked about it, and you know, they want to be home right now, you know, with us, and where they feel safe, and we can just talk about other things and not constantly talk about this. And that's not something that I was certainly going to argue with. So my kids are staying home whether there's school or not. So.
And in the meantime, please take care of yourselves. There is help out there. There are resources. We have a page up on our website. We're trying to compile those resources for you, even if it's like, how do I talk to my kids about this kind of thing? The state has put together resources. We've reached out to Sweetser. We had them here throughout the day, as well as NAMI Maine, really helping us make sense of this for you when it comes to just your mental well-being and your children. As you can see right here, text support. For that article, you can just text the word support to 207-828-6622.
And it's important to do, in general, it's important to do. It's extra important to do here, because this isn't something that we can say, oh, well, the last time this happened, here's how we dealt with it, right? This has never happened in our state at this magnitude. We don't know how to deal with something like this. We do need to realize and self-realize that we need a little help to do this. And the schools are amazing across the board, offering support. If and when they open back up again, the people are there for them. They're equipped for this. They've trained for things like this, hoping to never have to put it into play. So use those resources. Text that number if you don't know where to go, because there is help out there and everybody needs it, regardless of what you think you can handle. Do it, and it'll be better for you, which makes you then better for the people that you care about.
Absolutely. And speaking of just everyone who's kind of weighing in on their own experiences here, people who are offering support to others, many lawmakers I talked to today say they are hearing from other people in other parts of the country who have unfortunately lived through this before, their colleagues kind of saying, hey, this is how I handled it where I'm from. Obviously something we don't want to have to acknowledge is real, but someone else who has a very close connection to this is Chancellor Daniel Malloy of the Humane police system. He, of course, was governor of Connecticut during the Newtown shootings. Chloe Thibault spoke to him earlier today. Take a listen.
Real damage would be we become hardened to these kinds of occasions, that we get used to it, that we accept it, that we don't react or mourn when this happens in someone else's state. We need to maintain our humanity and our care for one another. And what would be frightful for me is if that hardening of our societal outlook was to take place, what additional damage we would do to our society.
Yeah, so obviously he has a firsthand experience with that in what at the time was a truly horrific event, and one of those that we thought would wake the country up, and it just has continued to happen since, and it happened here in Maine.
Yep, and leaders, everywhere with weighing in on this and showing up in person. Senator Angus King jumped on the first plane yesterday to get here. Senator Collins obviously was here. We heard from her earlier tonight. We heard from Jared Golden. We heard from the Governor Mills obviously this morning at the press conference, and Congresswoman Shelley Pingree also weighing in, and we want to hear what she had to say.
I mean, I think most of us just can't keep it in our minds that this could happen here, because we think of ourselves as a state where people are rarely killed, and certainly we've never had an incident like this before. I started hearing from all of my colleagues last night who were watching the national news, and so many of them were saying, hey, this is what happened when we had a shooter in my district. This is how we dealt with this or that. And it's one of those moments where you're saying, like, gosh, this really does happen everywhere, and no state is immune. And now we have to deal with the consequences of that.
So I actually talked to Congresswoman Pingree at her Portland office earlier today, and she was telling me, like has been the case, all of Maine's congressional delegation has been in touch with the Biden administration about what is unfolding here in Maine. And Congresswoman Pingree even shared that she was in touch with U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who told her that FBI resources have been brought into the state, including the same team that was used to capture the Tsarnaev brothers after the Boston bombing. So all resources being brought to bear in Maine as this manhunt continues for Robert Card.
Yeah, and we talked yesterday, and I feel like we've talked about so many things. Obviously, President Biden personally called Senator King to pledge his support and extend his condolences, and Senator Collins said she heard from the president a couple of times as well. There's no shortage of resources right now looking for Robert Card. What we have is a shortage of answers because we still don't know where he is. It is the question everybody wants answered. It is the number one thing that my phone keeps getting texted. Have you heard anything? Do you know anything? Have we heard it? Is there close to an end or an idea of where he's going to be? It's what everybody wants to know, because it's an uneasy feeling. You have somebody who's obviously very sick, who's very dangerous, who's out there, and we don't know where that is. And since we don't know, it literally could be anywhere, because we just don't know. We don't know that it's not anywhere. So that's just a really, I left here yesterday, whatever time it was, hoping that when I came back, at least that question would be answered. And it's still an uneasy feeling to not have that answered.
Yeah, and I don't know if we still have that video from the scene earlier tonight. You can just see the sheer number of officers still in the state. Earlier, Public Safety Commissioner Michael Soschuk was saying that more than 350 law enforcement officers are in the state handling this manhunt tonight. Truly incredible, for lack of a better word. And it's important because of the dynamics at play. You mentioned someone who is sick, experiencing severe mental health. I mentioned earlier that family of Robert Card, Katie Card, who was married to his brother, so his sister-in-law, telling NBC News, quote, he was picking up voices that he had never heard. Quote, his mind was twisting them around. He was humiliated by the things that he thought were being said. It turned into a manic belief. Quote, he was just very set in his belief that everyone was against him all of a sudden. We reached out to make sure everyone was on the same page, because he's someone who does gun training. We're concerned about his mental state, that's all. So a firearms instructor, a longtime member of the Army Reserve, mental illness on top makes it an incredibly complicated and complex situation for law enforcement this evening.
Oh, and you know what, Zach, the hard thing, right, is we want this over, right? This is on our timeline. We want this to be over, right? And it's hard to trust the process. And it's not that we don't trust the people. We certainly have full faith in the people that are searching. You remember when Corporal Cole from Norwich Walk was killed a few years back? It took a few days, you know, for a manhunt before they finally found the person ultimately responsible. So you have to trust the process. It's just a hard thing to admit to because you just want it to be over. William Ross from the Maine State Police spoke earlier at the news conference this morning to kind of go over the timeline of how all of this came together just before 7 o'clock last night when it started all of this in Lewiston. So let's hear what Corporal Ross had to say.
Last night, October 25th at approximately 6:56 p.m., the Auburn Communications Center received a 911 call of a male shooting in Just in Time, or the Spare Time Recreation Center in the town of Lewiston, located at 24 Mollison Way in Lewiston. Shortly after that, at about 7:08 p.m., the Communications Center received multiple 911 calls about an active shooter inside of a Schmenge's Billiards at 553 Lincoln Street in the town of Lewiston. A large law enforcement response from multiple surrounding agencies assisted the Lewiston Police Department in trying to identify who this individual was and what was happening. As you can imagine, this was a very fast-paced, fast-moving, very fluid scene, very dangerous scene that these guys and girls were going into.
A fast scene, a dangerous scene. They understand the stakes here. They understand the situation that they're dealing with this armed and dangerous person. You have all these communities in that shelter-in-place kind of situation tonight. So if you don't have to go out, stay in until police find this person. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we are continuing to learn more and more about the victims. We do have some photos to share with you that we are trying to keep you updated on, just so that we can remember their names, remember their faces, and their families telling us, their friends telling us that they don't want them remembered for this tragedy. They want them to be remembered for the lives that they lived. So I don't know if we have that graphic for you, but Vivian Lee did speak to someone who survived that shooting and can talk about one of the victims.
I'm going to miss them.
Brandon Mullen is mourning several of his friends killed in the shooting rampage at Spare Time Recreation Bowling Alley Wednesday night. The Lewiston man was getting ready to play a game when he heard a loud bang, then another one.
I had my bowling ball in my hand and I heard a gunshot and I dropped my bowling ball on the other bowling balls and I ran.
He and other bowlers headed to the closest door, away from the gunfire, which was erupting near the entrance.
They opened the door and we pushed each other and to get out of there.
Brandon ran to a nearby restaurant where others hid in the back of the building. He managed to get home safely, only to find out that several of his friends had lost their lives, including Tricia Aslan, who worked at the bowling alley. Brandon says she was near the entrance when the alleged gunman, Robert Card, burst through the door. The longtime bowler says while he has continued to receive calls and messages of support since the tragedy, he won't be at peace until Card is arrested.
I just wish that they do something big time to try to find the person who did this.
And there is justice for his friends he loves so much. Vivian Lee, News Center, Maine.
Wow. Every story.
Yeah, and you know, yesterday we talked about what the potential ripple effect was going to be once we started to hear these names, and then we found out how we all are somehow connected to these people because we're such a small state.
The big small town situation.
Yeah, so now we see the names and we hear the stories and we hear about them, and it just, you know, it's necessary for healing, and yet it enhances the pain, if that makes sense. Like it's
Totally makes
painful
sense.
but healing at the same time. So
Yeah. So as the control room works to pull up those names, I just want to kind of throw out some of these names here. Peyton Brewer Ross worked at Bath Iron Works. We received a statement from General Dynamics BIW tonight saying that they're all heartbroken to share that they've lost a member of the BIW family. They're sending the deepest condolences to family and friends. Peyton was a valuable part of our team, a member of the pipe shop test crew, and recently assisted in the launch of a ship there. So you can see the images on your screen.
I feel like Ron Moran, as I see his picture, and I saw it earlier tonight, I saw that and I said, geez, this guy looks familiar. I feel like somewhere in my sports career, and he was a softball umpire, such an important part of his life, and he just, so many people. I also had friends on social media who were connected directly to Ron as well, and spoke so highly of him and everything that he was about, and obviously a great loss for that community.
And we've said over and over again, Trisha Aslin, she went by Trish. We've heard from her friends that she was a mother or a golfer, loved to bowl, which is where she was at spare time. And we're also hearing from friends and family that she apparently was actually trying to call 911 when she was shot and killed, trying to save the ones around her, trying to get help. But she's remembered by her friend and coworker at the Apple Valley Golf Course as a hard worker, a passionate community member, and a beloved friend.
Arthur Strout, lower left-hand side of your corner. If you guys have been with us through our coverage, you'll remember News Center Maine's Ryan Wooten actually spoke with his wife, Christy, and there was some confusion yesterday where Christy was told, apparently, according to Christy, at the hospital, first that her husband was going to maybe be okay, but was in really bad condition, and then that turned into the fact that he didn't make it, and then she couldn't get clarification either way. Clearly we have it now. Arthur Stroud and his wife Christy, very emotional, speaking with our Raya Wooten last night. So
yeah, and Bob Violet there in the bottom center, leaving behind 5 children. His cousin John remembering him as a strong-willed person. He loved his kids, he loved his family. He made sure he always put us first. There was never a doubt that he wouldn't take care of us, and I really don't know what I'm going to do without him.
Josh Seal in the top right, we heard from his wife Elizabeth, who posted on social media about his loss, and saying, at least in part, for those of you who knew him, first and foremost, he was the world's best father to our 4 pups. He was always there for them, lending an eye or a hand and going to their sporting or extracurricular activities. Always loved spending time with them, traveling to day trips to the beach, camping for the weekend. Amazing father, wonderful husband, Josh Seal, in your top right there.
And as our reporter with our sister station who's here helping us out this week, Matthew Torres, said just a little bit ago, we are working to kind of get our graphics updated, get more pictures to you. But Bill Young, 43, and his son Aaron Young, 14, killed at spare time. So we're learning more about all of these people tonight. And let us not forget, too, the number of people who are still recovering from injuries, still at Central Maine Medical Center. I believe at last check, when we heard from John Alexander, the chief medical officer there, still 8 patients, no change in conditions. We have 5 in what they call stable condition, and 3 in critical.
And 3 hospitals taking part in the triage from last night, with Maine Medical Center seeing patients, obviously Central Maine Medical Center and St. Mary's as well. At Central Maine specifically, though, we had a chance to catch up with them, and here's what they had to say.
This is a pretty significant catastrophe for this team to go through. Certainly there have been other situations where we've had a large number of patients come in a short period of time, but it's just the nature of the heinous act that happened really makes this very different than any other time.
Okay. Wow. we've talked a lot about the law enforcement response. We've talked a lot about the families of the victims. Important to remember the healthcare professionals who've been working around the clock for well over 24 hours now, just trying to treat all of these victims. They train for this, they prepare for this, but nothing can prepare you for this.
This is the real life equivalent of insurance. It's something that you have to have and you hope you never need, right? So you trained for something like this. You train for mass shootings, for active shootings, and so you're ready if it happens. And then you just don't want the if it happens part to become a reality. And last night, and obviously continuing to today, it has happened, and we're living through it currently as we speak. And people are responding. I think we touched a little bit on this yesterday, where I haven't heard or seen or had any stories sent our way where it hasn't worked the way it's supposed to, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like the law enforcement is, they had a plan and it's being executed the way it was supposed to, and the hospitals had a plan. Everybody had a plan. There didn't seem it wasn't confusion and chaos. It was a very well organized, okay, here's what happened and here's what we're going to do, and everybody had a clear mission and knew what their jobs were, and that part of this response to the tragedy has gone seamlessly, it seems. And there's some solace in that when something like this happens, our people that we count on to guide us and help us, literally, know what to do. And this has been, in that regard, positive that's been taken care of.
Yeah, and you touched on this a little bit before, and we spoke about it in the previous hours with Amanda Hill, Brian Nucono, and Chris Costa about this idea that we are going to feel uneasy until this man is taken into custody. But also, we're not going to be able to really start that process of grieving until this happens for all of the families of these victims. It's going to take him being in custody for them to start that difficult process. So we are still in that stage of uncertainty and stress, and I can't imagine what it's like for those families to be going through that. And really, the state as a whole is at a standstill.
Well, and it's not. It is those families, clearly 100%. It's also everybody else. We're all directly affected by this. There are people who maybe didn't know any of the 18 victims and the 13 people that were injured, but yet have tremendous anxiety about leaving their house right now because Robert Card is still out there. We all feel, our brothers and our sisters' pain. And, I don't know Bill Young. I don't know his son, Aaron.
But you could have been him.
But I'm a dad,
Yeah.
right? So now I feel like, Bill Young. I mean, I can't believe that, you went bowling with your son and now you're both gone. So, this is a giant onion with so many layers to it. But the first part of it for all of us is find Robert Card, right? We've got to find Robert Card, and then we can move on to what's after that, which is part of the healing process.
Yeah, earlier I mentioned Trish Aslin, Trisha, who was bowling at Spare Time. Her friend and coworker who was there with her as part of a bowling league for the Apple Valley Golf Course. They were just there after work, taking part in this bowling league. He spoke to our digital producer, Griffin Stockard, and here's some of what he had to say.
We had the Apple Valley Bowling League, and we take up lanes 1 through 10, I think. But unfortunately for our league specifically, we were near the closest exit of the back of the building. I was in a really good position where it was me, a handful of tables and things, and then there was him at the front counter. So when I saw him looking down at his gun, he was facing away from our group. I turned to everybody at the bowling alley on that side, and I said, "Everybody, get out that exit door right now!" Live shooter, just yelled as loud as I could to get her, and everybody just started running towards that back exit. And part of me is thankful that I was where I was at the time to help and get my mother and my crew out of there to safety. But at the same time, I almost wish that I was up closer to him when he came in, because every time I close my eyes, I visualize myself attacking him. So, I mean, those people without shoes on or one shoe on and no phones, no keys, no nothing. And we all just kind of found our way across the street into this well-lit parking lot area. And we're basically kind of taking head counts at that point, like who's missing, who's here, who's not here. Pretty stressful times because without everybody having their phones, you can't really account for everybody because, there's 10 people over at Marco's, there's a person in the ditch over there, another couple already, ran off and then they called someone to come pick them up. So, there's people missing. And Trish was definitely somebody I was looking for, and she didn't make her way out.
Wow. Yeah, so there's a lot of that for the people who are still with us, who can talk about what they went through and what they're experiencing now. We thank him for sharing that with us, so we learn more about not just what he went through, but about Trish and the loss there, which is tragic.
Right,
So.
and like I said, so many of us in the room today have talked with those families, with those friends who continue to share the same sentiment that they don't want their loved ones, you hear it over and over again, don't want your loved ones to be remembered for this tragedy. You want them to be remembered for the life they lived. So the fathers, the mothers, the sisters, and everyone just kind of grieving tonight with what's going on.
So we don't know where Robert Card is yet. We have been learning more about him as well, and people who know him, or at least his family. So we want to hear some of that.
You see everything around here is their land. They're farmers. They're really good people. Saw his brother and talked to him while he was hunting, and other than that, he's been in the military the last 20 years as far as I knew. I've been here for 44 years. I know everybody. I mean, it's a small community, and I mean, the Cards are really good people. They're hardworking, farming people, and this whole thing is absolutely mind-blowing.
So you obviously heard from a neighbor there of the Cards in Bowdoin, right near the area of Meadow Road, where police swarmed that house earlier tonight. We've been talking about it throughout the night, that's an area that is quintessential Maine.
Sure.
If you talk about small town Maine, you see those sprawling fields, the rolling hills, and the farmhouse, and so many communities like that.
I think I heard Sam Rogers mention earlier tonight when he was on the scene, it looks like, for a visual if you want, if you were going to the fair, what the fairgrounds would look like, where you'd park on the grass and walk over to the rides. It's just wide open, sloping, grass space with houses kind of scattered throughout.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have the map to pull up from that scene. So this is Meadow Road. You can see there in the center, and you can see how close it is to Lewiston. We're talking about 15 miles here. I think about a 25-minute drive from that initial scene at Spare Time Bowling Alley to where police swarmed this house tonight. What you can't see on this map is just north of that is Lisbon Falls, where they say they are now focusing or refocusing their search.
Which is where his car was found.
Right, at that boat launch. And earlier we were hearing from the Coast Guard that they were working to track down some kind of 15-foot boat he had, but I don't know that was ever kind of confirmed. It was a situation where they acknowledged that he had this boat. They couldn't account for it, but they couldn't provide any further information there. But obviously the scene that they're focusing in here, or the area they're focusing in rather, is not that far away from where those initial shots rang out just over 24 hours ago.
Just to get you updated on what we're going to be doing for you guys, we're going to take you to the top of the hour. And this is all assuming nothing changes between now and then, meaning that they haven't found Robert Card yet. If they do, obviously we're not going anywhere. But at midnight we will take a little bit of break, and then every 25 minutes or so from there we'll come back on and update you on whatever the latest happens to be up until 4 a.m. So for 4 hours we'll do that, and then at 4 a.m. we'll go right back to wall-to-wall coverage, and we'll bring you all the latest and that we know about everybody.
Yeah, we've heard from a lot of you viewers tonight, and we really appreciate your thoughts being with us. We are here for you to get you the latest information, and a lot of people saying keep staying on TV. We need this information now. So we are going to leave you at midnight, but we will be checking in throughout the evening, and then of course be back in our full capacity first thing in the morning, as you often are throughout the week on the Morning Report, Lee. I want to also share maybe some of the more positive things. I think earlier we were showing the social media posts from around the country that are popping up. You have the Bruins doing their jersey, donating some money to the families. You have all of these entities that come together at times like this. Some of these posts will have that picture of the map of Maine with the heart over Lewiston. So
with the
lot
Bruins
of
specifically, I mean, Jim Montgomery is the head coach. He obviously played at UMaine for 4 years, won a national championship back in 1993. Very strong ties to our state, and so he spoke about the situation in Lewiston before tonight's game. Jeremy Swayman, goalie for the Bruins, played tonight for Boston. He's a former UMaine goalie as well, and he hung a jersey on the back of the glass behind the Bruins bench that said, had the number 207 written on the back of the jersey, and it said Lewiston strong. And I think you just mentioned, Zach, the Bruins, the entire team signed sticks, and they auctioned off those sticks after the game with all the money going to the victims in Lewiston, and the team also itself pledging, just the team getting it started, if you will, with $100,000. It was Brad Marchand of the Bruins signing a stick. It's one of the things to be donated tonight. So.
Yeah, and there was also a jersey, I'm not sure if you have a picture of it, but the jersey with the 207 number, and then Lewiston where the name would be on the back. So great for them for stepping up at a time like this. But when you see this outpouring from across the country, it's a reminder that it happened. That we say it's not going to happen here, and it happened here. So while, of course, we appreciate that outpouring of support, it does make it all the more real.
And there have been lots of sports teams that have reached out. We talked last night about the Celtics. Cooper Flagg, who is from Newport, and his mom went to UMaine. Obviously, his family's from here. He's the number one high school basketball prospect in the country. He weighed in thinking about his home state, and really everybody, the Red Sox, the Patriots, all across the board. And, this is the stuff that we've always seen happen in other places. This is the support we would always lend to other places. We would be, Uvalde strong, or whatever community needed our support, we were there for them. It is very surreal to be on the other end of that and to be seeing all this and wait a second, they're talking about us. Like, it's just, I can't get used to the fact that this is something that we are now actually currently going through, and that all of these people, as heartwarming as it is, it's still very surreal to think that this is about us now.
That it is. Meantime, that manhunt continues. We haven't heard from police for quite some time since they surrounded that home, and no further information about what happened there or what didn't happen there. It appears that he wasn't inside the home because they all left the scene. This is Robert Card right there on your screen. He is considered armed and dangerous. There is still a shelter-in-place order in effect for much of Androscoggin County, so that's the towns of Lisbon, where that search has now refocused, as well as Bowdoin and the Lewiston Auburn communities as well. A number of schools canceling classes and all of that.
If we can get A48 ready, Luke, I think that's important because, we talk about how many people are out there right now looking for this man, Robert Card, that they've been looking for since last night. And trusting the process and understanding that these people that we put our faith in to keep us safe will in fact do so. And the Commissioner of the Maine State Police Public Safety, Michael Soschek, spoke earlier tonight, not just about what his team is doing, so the Lewiston and the Androscoggin County team, but there's just a giant, massive team right now formed in this search efforts, and we'll hear from Commissioner Soschek.
We have literally hundreds of police officers working around the state of Maine to investigate this case, to locate Mr. Card, who again is a person of interest and a person of interest only, and we'll continue to gather information so that we can bring the suspect to justice and ultimately seek prosecution down the road.
So that sound was actually from last night, I believe. But again, he was speaking today about that just sheer presence of police. The sheer number, over 350, I think, was the last update. And you really saw it earlier when Alex Haskell and Sam Rogers were at that home on Meadow Road in Bowdoin. You saw the canines, you saw the tactical gear, you saw not just one, but several of the large tactical trucks. We saw license plates. Sam Rogers, as that kind of procession was making its way out of the area, Sam Rogers was saying that there were state police from Massachusetts, license plates from really all across New England. So that is still true. What he said last night is still true tonight. And I think for them that is probably incredibly frustrating that they haven't gotten there just yet. But we know that they are working hard as we speak to try and track him down. I actually think we have some new sound from Commissioner Sawchuk now.
Our reality for today is that this suspect is still at large. And we want to provide community support for the victims, for the families, in the communities across the state. But we also have an incredibly strong laser-like focus on bringing this suspect into custody and ultimately to justice.
You can see Governor Mills there behind Commissioner Sawchuk, and this is it has to be frustrating for them because all they want is to find Robert Card. They want all of us to have that a moment of exhale where we can feel safe again, and it's such a moving target. There have been so many locations. First of all, there were 2 different locations for the actual shootings, albeit 4 miles apart, but still 2 different crime scenes. They've been, looking in Lewiston, looking in Lisbon, looking in Monmouth for a little bit today, looking in Bowdoin. It kind of keeps moving itself around, and you're moving masses of people to all these places.
Right, and they, of course, are still continuing to keep those areas, those original crime scenes, secured. So there are still police on those scenes, probably processing evidence, probably still dealing with witnesses. So it's not just the manhunt going on. They're still focusing on these 2 areas where that tragedy initially happened. I'm sure there's a lot of evidence to go through there, a lot that they can't share with us about probably intelligence that they have about Mr. Card, about the surveillance videos that they were sharing with us earlier, the still images from it anyway. I can't imagine having to watch that kind of footage, but that is the work that they need to do to bring this man in and to have justice served.
And you're taking those people and you're splitting them into different, really, departments, if you will, because there's the search, part of it. Then there's the talk to the victims, and then there's the crime scene analysis, and then there's so many different layers to this to put together this entire puzzle to try to lead you to a direction where you ultimately end up with Robert Card in custody. So there's a lot to it. Again, this is what they train for, and these are the people we have our faith in, and we will trust the process that this will come to resolution, and we just hope that it's sooner than later, just like they do.
But again, we haven't had a press conference or anything for hours now. We've received little bits of information from police. I understand they're working, and we'll likely hear more from them tomorrow morning. I imagine it seems like they kind of reset each morning to keep us informed about what's going on and what we need to know as they work to track this man down. Robert Card there on your screen. He is considered armed and dangerous. If you happen to see him, police are still asking you give them a call. You can just call 911 if you have to, especially if you feel unsafe.
Also, Zach, real quick, the one constant that the state police and all police have maintained is if you see Robert Card, they definitely want to hear from you. What they don't want is for you to approach him.
Yes.
They've been very clear from the get-go that this is not somebody that you go try to detain yourself or engage with it in any way. If you see him, you are just to call your closest authority, let them know what you saw, where you saw it, and let them take care of it, because it's that much, obviously, of a dangerous situation.
Yeah, it's not the time to be the hero. I know Sam Rogers, I think it was in Lisbon last night, overheard someone kind of get in his truck and say, I'm going to go get him. And while I understand that is a Mainer thing to want to handle the situation, this is a situation we have to leave up to the police. So taking a breath here, I want to go back to where this all started with a timeline of events that got us to where we are today.
It all started around 6:56 Wednesday night when police received reports of a shooting at Spare Time Recreation Bowling Alley. Then just minutes later at 7:08 p.m., dispatchers received 911 calls about a shooter at Shemengi's Bar and Grill 4 miles away. Video showed people running from the scenes. Less than an hour later, at 8:06, police released this photo of the shooter from surveillance footage, walking into Spare Time with an assault rifle. Later, sharing this picture of a white Subaru they believe he was driving. At 8:09, nearby Bates College was placed on lockdown. After that, Auburn and Lewiston residents were ordered to shelter in place around 8:30 as hundreds of officers started a manhunt. Meantime, loved ones of the victims gathered outside of Central Maine Medical Center.
Friends are here, we're all waiting, and we've heard nothing. They won't tell us if he's alive, if he's in critical condition, if he's passed. They won't tell us anything.
At 9:26, police got a call identifying the shooter as 40-year-old Robert Card of Bowdoin. At 9:56, officers were notified they found the white Subaru belonging to Card at a boat launch in Lisbon, but not him. Then at 11:52, Lisbon residents were ordered to shelter in place. Police holding a press conference warning the public of the danger.
Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way.
A reunification center was opened at Auburn Middle School, where some got good news and others got the news they feared.
Still in shock. I think we're all in shock. I think us as a community are.
Through the night, police continued their search. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Bowdoin residents were ordered to shelter in place. Then at 10:30 Thursday morning, police confirmed 18 people were killed and 13 others were injured in the shooting. But the search continues for the suspect.
This is a dark day for Maine. I know it's hard for us to think about healing when our hearts are broken. But I want every person in Maine to know that we will heal.
The governor was, certainly speaking from the heart. I mean, you could feel the emotion from her, and the end there with the "we will heal," right? I don't know that there's a doubt out there that we will get through this. We've never wanted to have to get through something like this, but I don't think there's any question about what will happen once Robert Card is caught and once we are on the other side of at least that part of this.
Yeah, but this is not normal by any stretch of the imagination, and we want you to know that this will be difficult, and that there is help out there. If you need it, you can just text the word support to the number right there on your screen, 207-828-6622. We'll send you a link to our website where we have a number of resources we've compiled, a number of phone numbers to call. Of course, if you're in an immediate crisis, a mental health crisis, or you know someone who is, please dial 988 or the Maine crisis line at 1-888-568-1112.
One of the things I took from Greg Marley this morning, who was from NAMI, Maine, who joined us, was as everybody has rallied to support their field, as law enforcement has arrived in mass to try to find Robert Card, as extra media members have showed up to help us cover and tell the stories of the people involved here, so has the mental health world. He was telling us this morning that we asked, what are your colleagues saying, and all of them were saying unanimously, what do you need from us? I'm off today, but I'm coming in. I'm opening up my office hours. Whatever it is, they're making themselves available to us so we can get the help that we need, so we can take care of the people that we love. You cannot overstate the importance of our mental health as we process something that our state has never gone through before. None of us who live in Maine and are from Maine, have lived here forever, have ever gone through something like this of this magnitude. And there is no blueprint to go back to the last time this happened, we did this. There isn't one of those. So please make sure you're okay, because there are people counting on all of us, and if we're not, then we won't be able to help them. So use the resources that are available, and thank you to the people providing the resources for us to do that.
Yeah, and that's going to be a night for me, but I know you will be here throughout the morning. We have been having wall-to-wall coverage since this first broke yesterday. yesterday evening. We will continue to keep you updated, and then we will bring our full coverage back. And I'm sure we will learn more overnight and into the morning.
Yeah, so I'll be here every half hour on the hour. So I'll see you at 12:31 all the way through. When we get to 4 o'clock, okay, Sharon Rose will be here, and the whole morning crew will be here, and we'll start again at 4, and we'll go straight through again. So for now, for the next 4 hours, it'll be every 30 minutes, and then at 4 o'clock, we'll see you straight through. So please stay safe, everybody, and take care of each other.
Take care.
I'm just gonna call it on that, and then start up a new stream, something different. I'm open to suggestions as well. Yeah, this is a horrible situation. I'm getting into something different. I hope you come back on. Thanks for being here.